This conference will now be recorded.
Hello everyone, welcome to day 13 in our GCP Cloud Architect training. So where last week we finished Kubernetes concept, which is mostly a cloud agnostic solution, can work in every cloud. Towards the end, we moved into a new compute module called as App Engine, where there are two flavors in App Engine Standard and Flexible. And App Engine Standard, we saw can scale down to 0, and it's more like a sandbox environment. And App Engine Flexible is a managed VM which can only scale down to 1. I'll show you that scale down to 0 and 1 in today's class in through a demo itself. And in App Engine Standard itself, we saw there are two run times or generations available, basically first generation and the second generation. The first generation was from the beginning 2008 or 7 till 2018. So with the help of isolation mechanism, G Suite, sorry, not G Suite, Gvisor, Google is now able to provide more runtime support, and that's the reason. After 2018 till 2020-21, if you see, there are more runtime support Google has provided, only because of Gvisor, which is also a virtualization runtime, basically, which leverages the same cloud sorry run C concept which we had seen. So we had stopped at this stage last week, and we had provisioned a app engine in our project, and I had mentioned you can only create one app engine in one project, and the region is going to be fixed the moment you provision it, and you cannot change it. I had also shared my own mistakes which I had done in one of the projects. So if we switch back to our demonstration, we had stopped at this stage. So that was just a small refresh of what we did. So we had provisioned at this stage, we had stopped it. Uh, the UI was showing you have configured your app engine, and you may have a question. Now you mentioned this is for a web application. There is always a requirement that people may in one project itself may have 2 or 3 websites or microservices, 2 or 3 microservices. Then how can I do it? So should I do it in every should I do new projects, or can I do it here itself? I'll try to answer that also. I'll try to answer also the scale down to 0 feature during this demonstration. So only one app engine is possible, but you can have multiple services or multiple microservices. So one component, there could be a website. If you take a web application or a website or a web app, all are same, people use different terms. uh, there may have multiple microservices behind it. So what you can have is multiple microservices, uh, multiple versions of it. So one app, you can have microservice 1, you can have microservice 2, you can have microservice 3, and those microservices can have multiple versions, version 1, version 2, all those things. So, and those versions behind the scene are nothing but few instances. You can treat it as VM instances itself in very, very simple terms, but you'll not have full control to it because this is platform as a service. So you'll not have full control to it. So you'll have limited control. It's going to act as a sandbox environment. So you cannot do uh, much debugging or anything with the instance itself, but you will have access to the logs, all those things. All right. So let's try to understand this diagram by doing a demonstration. Okay. So this is what it shows. Now, for simplicity reason, I have launched my Cloud Shell in a new tab so that I can refresh the screen easily. Okay. So one thing with App Engine is you cannot do anything in the UI. Only thing is that you can provision it basically. But if you were to deploy something as an application, a web application, you have to always deploy it in cloud using command line. Basically, that's the expectation. You cannot do it via UI. So because it's going to be a web application, let's look into a small web application. We already have a web application, right? The 7 lines of code which we had containerized, all those things. The same thing is what we are going to use again today. So let me just launch my Cloud Shell once again. It times out. So basically the focus is only going to be web application today. Developers tend to use this one heavily, but as a cloud architect, what is our role when it comes? The first is the region. Figure out the region which is going to be the closest one, or at least as per the customer's requirement. So that is something which we have to figure. Second thing is the language support. If they feel they want to write it in, say for example, .NET, some other language, then you can give them the recommendation whether these runtimes are supported or not, basically. So let me just log in to the project. First, let me use my Cloud Shell as the developer's environment. Okay, so uh, for 5 minutes, I'll be a developer who's writing a code. So and all these codes are in your Google Drive, folks. Module 3, you should be able to see it. Now let me just open up this file, server.js, same 7 lines of code. The 7 number is going to be our favorite number because of it's simple. So same Node.js code. Uh, just instead of saying welcome to containerization, we are saying hello world from GAE, Google App Engine Standard Environment. Because we are going to do one more demo on flexible environment also. So that's the reason I have differentiated this. Same 7 lines of code, no difference. Now this is what a developer can write very easily. So he has no challenges writing such a code. And the developer does not also have a challenge mentioning the dependencies in a language specific way. If it's Node.js, it's going to be something in a file called as package.json. Okay, I don't know how it came. Okay, exit. So quit. So if it's Node.js, it's going to be package.json. In this file, you mention all the dependencies. If it's Python, right, you're going to use something called as requirements dot text file. This is where you mention all the dependencies. To run this code, I need this dependency, I just need this module, all those things. Developer. If it's Java, it's going to be usually in a file called as maven dot, sorry, pom.xml. So like this, every language has a way where the dependencies are going to be captured. The developers are very comfortable doing it. So that is what even developer has done here. So if I just go to this one, package.json, it is very simple. I'm just mentioning, I just need Node.js 10 version, nothing else. Just give me Node version 10 version, I can run this code because it does not have any complex code in this. It's very simple, which has all the built-in libraries already. So I'm going to use that. That's the only requirement I have. So what's the biggest advantage of this app engine here? For a minute, just ignore this file. That is something specific to app engine which they need to add, and it is going to be very simple. Now developer does the way he or she works, and we are not asking him to write a Docker file. So that's the advantage here. So they do what they are good at. So no need to write a Docker file, or no need to force them to write a Docker file, or no need to have a new team member who can write a Docker file understanding the code. So they do what they are doing currently. So what we need to do extra is only add one file, a configuration file, which is going to be very, very simple, called as app.yaml. So it's only one line of code, folks. It's only going to be one line of configuration which just says what is the runtime you are going to use. Tell me that. So we know App Engine standard supports various runtimes. We had seen it. One of the runtime which we are going to use is Node.js, specifically 10 version. Simple. So if I just go to my slides, we had mentioned this one, right? App Engine standard Node version 10, and you don't need to remember the version numbers from the exam perspective, folks. This is only from the implementation perspective. If somebody says, can I write code in Node.js 15? Looking at the slide, you can easily say no, App Engine standard does not support a Node.js 15. So if you just search for Node.js latest version 15 dot, and even in our containerization we did that. So 15 is not supported. If there is any older version of Node, Node 6 was there, Node 8 was there. If they have some legacy application and if they want to run it, App Engine standard is not going to provide you. So this part you are going to provide as a cloud architect, and we are not expecting you to write a code, but you're just going to say whether this thing is going to be supported or not. Now, by such kind of a material or going directly to the documentation, you can come to know whether that version is supported or not. So Node.js 10 is going to be supported. 12, if you want, you can also try it. It's going to work. 14 is in preview as per the documentation. So it's not generally available. It's in public preview. So Node.js 10 is going to be good enough. Only this line is what the developer needs to add. So should be very simple, right? And we are not asking him to learn something new. So that's the big benefit of App Engine. So that's where App Engine are very close to developers. Now, before I deploy this into App Engine, let me try to run it locally, whether this works or not. 7 lines of code, we know it works. Let's give a try. So the way we run it is Node.js server.js, node server.js. So when I do this, it's not going to output anyway because we know that it's going to listen on port 8080. So to preview it, click on this, preview port 80. It just says a standard message, hello world from GAE standard. Simple. So locally it is running in my system. Now if I were to make it run in or deploy in App Engine, how do I do it is I use a command. This command you have to somehow make a note because there is no alternative option. So there's no UI where you can go and get a G-Cloud equivalent and all do it, but you have to remember it. Okay, so you have to remember it. And if you remember last time when we provisioned our App Engine, uh, if I do describe, we prefer to use it in Belgium. That was the this thing which we had preferred. And I had also mentioned when you create an App Engine, it's going to basically create two buckets which is going to be there. This is your default bucket name, and there's going to be one more bucket which is called as staging. Let me just show you that. These are some background things which if you know that, it's going to be easier to understand what's happening. So console.com, google cloud.google.com. So this bucket was created because of GCR, because all the images were stored here. And last week on Sunday, when we enabled App Engine, these two buckets got created. You see, it is in Europe because our region which we have selected for App Engine is basically Belgium. This is the default bucket, and there's a staging bucket. Why that is required? Basically, when you upload the code goes to this staging bucket, then gets moved to here. So this is the default behavior, two buckets. Um, Now what we'll do is we'll try to deploy this code. So the code is Here, the command which I need to do is, it's very simple. Only 3 words: gcloud app deploy. That's it, folks. 3 words. So easy to remember, right? Gcloud app deploy. It's going to deploy your stuff into your project in the region which you have mentioned, which is Belgium. So you already have some code. What is going to happen there? So it needs to get uploaded to the Google Cloud Storage bucket from the, because the code currently is in your local machine, right? So from your Google Cloud, it's going to get uploaded to Google Cloud Storage first. From that Google Cloud Storage, it's going to go to the App Engine environment. So where Google is going to provision you the resource, all those things. Okay, this is what is going to happen when we start it. And anyway, we have seen Compute Engine gets provisioned in less than 30 seconds. Kubernetes engine gets started in less than 4 minutes. We have seen it ourselves. Why don't we put the same thing? App Engine is already provisioned, but how much long it takes to deploy a simple 7 lines of code? Let's look into that. So I'm going to put time in front of it as usual. And if I just do this kind of a deployment, right, let me, uh, I may lose track what version I'm doing, all those things. At least in your containerization, right, you are having that image. So if I just do gcloud app deploy, it's going to use timestamp as the version. So sometimes it's going to become difficult for you to remember at what time I deployed all those things. So what you can do is you can use a small flag called as -v to indicate your version. So version 1. So it's your choice how you want to name it. So there's no hard and fast rule here. So what versioning naming convention suits your organization, you can use this. So that's it. So 3 words only, but I have put time to know the time because we are deploying it for the first time, and we are going to create multiple versions here. So I wanted to create a specific version here. That's it. I can go hit enter. It's going to work. Before I do that, I wanted to launch one more Cloud Shell. Uh, I will run gcloud app instances. Sorry, I have to put list. It's going to show any instances are running. We have not even deployed anything. So basically you expect 0 instances. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this command in a watch mode so that every 2 seconds it's going to refresh. So if you see the clock, every 4 seconds it's refreshing. So 4 or 3 seconds, because the command itself takes around 1 minute or 1 second or 2 seconds. So this is what we have kept. Now, um, one more thing which I'm going to do before I do this is, we know without network there's no cloud, all those things. I myself have told you that, right? uh, and even when we created our VM Kubernetes, we had to use because Kubernetes behind the scene was using nothing but managed instance group only. So it requires a specific network. And what is a network which is created automatically when we create the project, folks? What is that network or VPC name or the network name called? We have not gone into the details, but at least we have highlighted it. It's going to have an automatically create a network created. What is the name of that network called in GCP for every project? For every project, you're going to have one network VPC. So that's going to be a default VPC. So let me just go here. Let me just go here. Uh, so because the navigation is becoming difficult, so I have just pinned it, folks. I just pinned it. So if I just go to my networking, I'll see those stuff. So to make the navigation a little smoother, I have just pinned it so that I can just focus on it. Go to my VPC network. So this is what, as Deepak Bhandari and Ankit mentioned, this is your default VPC. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to delete it, folks. I'm going to delete it uh, just to show you, when you're focusing on App Engine, you don't need to look into any networking. So an App Engine is going to be heavily used by startups who don't have any networking exposures, all those things. So if you are planning to join such kind of an organization, and you don't need to know any networking option stuff. So you just need to guide the team how to build such systems. That's it. So no network is required. So I'm just deleting it in front of you. So let me just delete it. No VPC, you cannot create them. I'll show you that. If you cannot create VM, you cannot even a Kubernetes cluster also. So let's just wait for this to come up, or sorry, go off, not come up. So we are deleting the VPC completely. No network. Um, there's some error. Network endpoint group. So something we would have created in compute engine. Let me just see that. So it checks is there any dependencies there. So network endpoint group is what it indicates. Let me just see. So there are some network endpoint groups created. Get it. When we create ingress, it creates automatically. So if you have not done the ingress demo of this thing, so go create it. It's going to create a network endpoint group. In our networking class, we'll talk more about this network endpoint group. Now, if I go to my VPC back, delete it. I just need to delete it. That's it. There was an issue, so I've tried to fix it. Let me see whether I can delete it. I don't want to have a VPC, but without a VPC, can I create App Engine? Is what I wanted to show you. I'll also show you without a VPC, I cannot create VMs. I cannot create Kubernetes engine. So let's wait. And I could have done this behind the scene, but I wanted to show you this part. Uh, and it's going to use some Google's network internally. But in my project, I don't need to have a VPC. So I don't have any VPC. I don't have any firewall rules. Nothing. Now, if I go and create a VM, that's where the fun comes into picture. So if I go to my compute engine screen, I'm just going to leave everything default. I'm not going to do anything. Just click on create VM and you will see a message saying that you don't have a network. Without a network, you cannot do anything. So I'm not going to do anything. Just click on create. It's going to throw me an error under your networking tab. Where's my networking tab? Here. You don't have any network is what it indicates. You don't have any network. So without network, you cannot do it. So you see this, no network available. Before you create a VM, first create a network. That's the suggestion which Google is doing. So without this, you cannot create VMs. So without compute engine, you cannot even use your Kubernetes cluster. So if you try that, you will also get the same error message because it also relies on virtual machines. So basically, no more Kubernetes engine, no more compute engine if you go with basically uh, zero network. But if I go back to my virtual machine, sorry, app engine screen, hope all the stuffs are there. Yeah, I can deploy a app engine standard environment without a network, standard environment. So we'll talk about flexible later. So let's hit enter. Now it's going to say, okay, this is your YAML file. It gets that automatically. This is your YAML file. Okay, this is your target for this thing. And it's going to create a default service. If you don't mention it, it's going to use default service. And the version is version 1, which you're mentioning. And it's going to give a URL, folks, automatically without you doing anything. It's going to give a URL, which is going to be your project ID dot some characters dot appspot.com. So from today onwards, when you look into any website which has a URL which is like appspot.com, it's a very clear indication it is deployed on App Engine. It is deployed on App Engine. So it's asking for a confirmation. Let me give yes. When I give yes, what's going to happen is, you see this, folks, uploading 3 files to Google Cloud Storage, basically. So that's what it's going to indicate. So it's uploading it. Now there is a new error, unable to receive PS2 service from GAE. Could be propagation delay or from the deleted apps. Okay, what is this service account? Oh, new error. Let's just see it, whether this service account is there or not. So let's just verify it. Go to IAM. And if you look at something like this service hyphen the project number, it's basically that is something which you have not created. These are Google managed service account. So if you see here, you will not see that. You'll not see anything. Always turn this on. Turn this on. This checkbox. There's a chance there are, and you see lots of service accounts there. Google managed one. Now you see it is there. This checkbox is going to play a role. So this is there. So what they are saying is maybe it is because of some propagation delay or request the deleted apps. So let's give a try one more time. Okay. So the error indicates like that. Let me give a try, hoping for it to work. Uh, Already it was uploaded to Google Cloud Storage bucket. Now it's going to only create a service, a microservice basically, to put it in very, very simple terms. So you saw there was an error and we saw the service account was there, and they themselves mentioned it could be because of a propagation delay. So just retrying is going to work out. And let's see 7 lines of code, how long it takes to deploy. And in reality, nobody is going to write just 7 lines of code, because this is the first time we are writing or deploying something in App Engine. We prefer to use a smaller version, and that too the same code we are trying to see from containerization to App Engine. And today we'll also see something very similar code but running in Cloud Run, which is one of the best features, I would say, when it comes to web focused applications. Let's wait for it to show up. 2 minutes is what usually it takes. No instances showing up. Hope it works. And I usually don't delete default VPC. I just leave it as this. But for this batch, I wanted to show you, because beta exam, I heard that the professional beta exam can become generally available in next few weeks. So by the time we finish, the beta one which you see will definitely be the GA. So when you take the exam at that time, it's going to be some new questions. So let's try to cover good stuffs basically. So App Engine standard does not require a network. So it is deployed, folks. It took around 1.90 seconds roughly, or 100 seconds. That's it. Acceptable, all good. Now it is deployed is what it shows, and it also shows to view the application you can use this URL. Now before I view it, usually when I say something is deployed, you expect that instance to be running, right? That is what you expect. There's going to be some instance URL. Okay, there should be an instance there, but here I don't see it. I don't see any instance. Maybe the watch command is not working. Try one more time without the watch command. You are going to see it is as still 0. Any reason why you think why it is not showing 0? First of all, it has been successfully deployed. There's no bug, so you can ignore that, or you can remove that option from your this thing. Why it is not showing any instances? Usually when you deploy a code, right, you will have an instance running. Awesome. So Anil B got it. Okay. So Anil B, if you can put it in the basically as a private chat, it's going to be good, so that everybody is going to think about it. So uh, only when you send a request, so everybody will get a chance to think. So please, when you put a response and you want to share something, put it to everyone. When there's a question which where you want to respond, put it to your other things. So no worries. So the thing is, we have not sent even a single request. It's a web application. You have not sent a single HTTP or HTTPS request. That is the reason the system has not even scaled up. It is scaled down to zero. This, you cannot get it in your AWS, folks. You can give a try. You can try it in your Azure. You cannot get it. You have to do some extra work to do this. But in GCP, it is built in. And this is the first product which Google launched in 2008. Such a feature in 2008. Now you can see, okay, this is okay, acceptable. 13 years back, somebody doing like this is an awesome thing. But people did not appreciate it at that time. Now, what I will do is, it's going to give me a URL. Let me just try this. So clear the screen. This is my URL. Uh, let me see whether it refreshes. Okay, it is not refreshed. It's not showing up. Now my app is running. If I just go to my this thing, App Engine instances list, it shows there's one instance running. Now I can share this with you. You can also give it, not a big application, but a simple hello world kind of a stuff. So around 10 people, you can hit it. So you're going to see, it's going to serve the request, the static content, welcome to, sorry, hello world from GAE instance. So now you saw scale down to zero first feature. If there's no traffic, it's going to scale down to zero. So there is one instance running. Beautiful. Let's just look into that instance for a minute and come back. So I'm going to use another tab. Go to App Engine dashboard. Now, before you deploy, right, it is going to be looking like this. Once you have deployed an app, your dashboard is going to look like this, folks, with some information, all those things, saying the region is Belgium, all those details. So if I just go to my service, you should have one service which is default. This is going to be your main URL. So the main URL which was deployed at, forget about the time, so it's in a different time zone. You want to see the version which you deployed, just click on your versions. You're going to see version 1 serving 100%, and it shows 0. It's a UI glitch, but from our terminal, if you see, it shows it is one instance is running. One instance is, oh, it scaled down. What happened? Yeah, it is there. One instance is running is what it indicates, but the UI will get updated slowly. Now, how confidently I'm saying, because it's an bug, is because if I go to my instances screen, I will see an instance there. I'll see the instance. The same instance is what you're seeing it in your terminal, starting with 00C6. That is the same thing. You see it here also. This is a virtual machine, folks. This is a virtual machine, and the ID is very big. That's one thing. And if I just mouse over to the right or scroll to the right, you see how many queries per second is coming, the latency, how many requests came. 16 requests came is what it indicates. So I guess everybody tried it a couple of times. So everything it shows. Good. But as I mentioned, this is going to be a kind of virtual machine itself, but this is a sandbox environment. So sandbox, you cannot try much. You will not have many knobs. So one of the knob which you don't have is SSH option. So you don't have an SSH option when it comes to App Engine standard. So then how will I look into the details? How will I look into the logs if something is not working? Then for that, you can come to this version. This is where the cloud architect has to give some guidance to the team, folks. Sometimes they may not be so comfortable because every developer will like to log into the VM and see everything. But if it's a platform as a service, little bit of education is going to be required. So where you can guide the team. So go to that specific version. Under tools, you have lots of options. They can see the source code, they can see the logs, they can debug, all those things. So it's totally a black box. So with very less knobs, so you can use these knobs for looking into the stuffs. And if you want to look into the configuration, you can also click on the config. It's going to show you some configuration. Uh, Looks like somewhat similar to our app.yaml file. We had only mentioned one line, but the system has generated few more configurations automatically. What is that? Environment by default is going to be standard. If you don't mention env, it's going to be always standard. Now what is this instance class? So like how when you create a virtual machine, you're going to have a machine type. When it comes to App Engine, they are going to have a class, an instance class. So if you search for that instance class, what does that mean? You'll come to know instance class. These are the instance classes which you get. The default is F1. So what that means is the compute which you get is 256 MB RAM and 600 megahertz of CPU limit. Now you may say, looks like we are in 90s or early 2000. So this is what I still have a machine, a desktop, which is like 512 MB of RAM, my first desktop. So these are looking like very small one, and we these days we get even phones which is like very high end. So with this kind of instance class, what we can do can be a question to you, but the key part here is this is individual instances. Now you can have huge number of such instances, n number, sorry, not huge, n number of instances like 20, 30 distributed. And it's okay, right? So that's where this instance class comes, and the maximum which you can allocate is 2 GB. That's the max, one instance. The instance which you see here, the instance which you see here, the maximum which you can go is basically G4, sorry, F4-1G, 2 GB of RAM, 2.5 gigahertz of CPU limit. So that is something the max you can go. Now, what it indicates basically is the microservice which the developers are going to do cannot be very memory intensive. If one microservice requires a good amount of memory, then they have to break it down into multiple microservices if they were to go with App Engine. What other configuration was there? So handless, which is nothing to do for us in this case because it's more for developers to configure. URL mappings. How do you do the URL mappings? And auto scaling. Minimum idle time automatic, maximum idle instance automatic, minimum pending latency. Everything is automatic, and there's no network. There's no network. Uh, Let me just show you whether it has created a network or not in this process, just to show you that it has not created a network. Refresh it forcefully. I guess first time we are seeing something without a network being there. We have provisioned something in GCP. So going back to App Engine versions, and it also shows what is your runtime. Now the instance is updated. It's showing one, and the environment is standard. So you can have one more code, which is Python. You can also have it. So you can run multiple versions, multiple runtimes in the same app engine, but one app engine only. So it's like your environment, but you are having multiple codes deployed there, basically. So this is the first part of the demo, folks. Any questions so far? So we just had a 7 lines of code. We deployed it. It's working fine. Good. Now, what we are going to see next is a few more demos. But before that, just wanted to ask, is there any questions on the app engine so far, which we have seen? Okay, clear. Thank you. So now what we will do is we don't want to see this boring message. we wanted to change to a newer version. As usual, like how we did in Kubernetes, we are going to do it. And before we do that, we are going to do some auto scaling demo. So remember, to do auto scaling in what compute engine and in Kubernetes, it took good amount of time for us to do that. In app engine, it's not going to take anything. So you just need to use the AB utility or CH utility, whichever suits you. Then send request. Let's try to do that. So first, let's see auto scaling in action. Then we'll change to a newer version. Okay. So, and the demo does not take longer time. It's going to take very short time. That's it. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to install AB utility in my Cloud Shell itself. So the Apache benchmarking utility. How I can install it? First of all, let me show whether it is there. It is not there. Sudo apt install. I don't want to install Apache web server. So what I'm going to do is Apache 2 utils. These are some of the utilities which you get. So I'm just going to install only the utilities. So AB is going to be part of that utility, Apache benchmarking. Done. Now if I type AB, it shows me the stuff. Now we know the command, how to use it. So let me just copy this. So AB minus 1000 request concurrent, and total request I want to send is 10,000. To which website? To this website. So what I'm going to do is hit and jump to this second tab. If we want to see auto scaling, what we should see is basically you should have n number of version 1 deployed, and in very few short time. Okay, it's not going to take longer time, so it's going to be very fast. So 30 milliseconds kind of a stuff is what you will see basically. So I'm just going to hit and jump to the other tab fastly. Everything for you to see now. So let's see. That's auto scaling, folks. So clear. In 1 minute or 2 minutes, we finish auto scaling demo. So that's where it becomes so easy when you move to cloud native solutions, very cloud native solutions. Now you have n number of resources running to serve your request, to serve your request. So 50,000 requests has been sent. So to handle that, some good amount of resources have been provisioned. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 such instances are created. So good. Now if I just try to refresh it, it works for me. It works for me. So that's it. That's auto scaling demo. So now this is scaling up. Now if you just leave it for some short time, it's going to scale down to minimum 1. And if you just wait for some more time, it's going to scale down to 0. If you don't do anything, it's going to scale down to 0. No traffic is going to scale down to 0. We already saw the scale down to 0 feature because there was no traffic. It was scaling down to 0 in the beginning itself. Let me see whether it has served all the requests. And why the slowness is only because my Cloud Shell has a limited capacity. So it's not able to send too many requests. So it's only because of that. That's it. So if you want to send too many requests, you can install it on your Cloud Shell and send a request to my app engine. It's going to also work basically. So this is auto scaling feature. Now, if I just go to my versions, we'll come to that. Microservices, how it supports multiple microservices, we'll come to that. We are first looking at some of the features which we have seen in compute engine and Kubernetes engine, the scaling up features, all those things. So if I just come to my instances, you'll see those instances which you saw around 8 or okay. Oh, I have 16. Okay, 16. I have 16. So there are more instances. There are more instances here. So 16 instances are provisioned. 16 instances are provisioned, and you can see also there's a spike. Maybe this is not refreshed fully. it shows the spike and scaling up. Now, if you just leave it for some short time, it's going to scale down. It's going to automatically scale down to 1, after sometimes to 0. That's the stuff. So easy to set up. You don't need not do anything, no load balancer, nothing. Everything started working automatically. And this URL, right? Nobody likes to share something like this as a professional website, right? So it should be your organization name.com. You cannot have your project ID. Project ID is already sensitive, so you cannot use this uh, uh, in the UR. You can just, this is for testing purpose, right? So this is going to be helpful. So uh, it gives you a domain also with SSL, which is going to renew every more information, which is going to renew every 3 months, if I'm not wrong. So, but this is all good for dev purpose, but you cannot use this for professionally. Like, so what people usually do is they can go to settings in App Engine. They can have something like a custom domain. They can attach a custom domain. If you have a domain already, you can use it. My website is also running on App Engine, but I have added a custom domain. So that's how I can access it like this. So if I just show you the website, yes, this runs on App Engine. It runs on App Engine, and you will see it. So, and I have also mentioned it runs on App Engine and uh, Cloud Repository, Cloud Build. So all these are the products which I use. So I have added a custom domain which I purchased from GoDaddy.com, and I have used it. So when it is production, you can use a domain like this. If it's dev environment, you don't need to do anything. So this is going to be totally free. So the domain which you get it. So this is something which you can do. Now some time has elapsed. Let's see whether instances has scaled down. You see a huge spike which went. Now you see it, folks. Previously it was around 16 instances. It has scaled down to 7 instances. If you just leave it for some more time, if you leave it for some more time, it's going to have only 1 instance. So auto scaling down also is happening. Now what I wanted to show is the new version of it. So let me try to define a new version of this and see how I can make that running, or do a traffic split, something of that sort. So I'll show you that. Then I'll jump into how we can support multiple microservices part. Okay. So let me just go back. Keep this here. So to make sure it is a different version, I'm just going to edit this file and indicate that served from version 2, something like that. That's it. The code change has been done. So the way I deploy it is using your App Engine. This one, you can mention the version which you are going to do. And I don't want to get any prompts. So I want to just do silently. I don't want to type yes, no, all those things. So silently I want to do. So this is what I'm going to do. So this is going to deploy a second version of it. Now, you may not be so confident whether this version 2 is going to work very well or not, even though your testing team, everybody has done a good job, but the team is not so comfortable, because they want to see whether it's going to really work with real traffic from the customers. So if you just do something like this, right, if you just run a new version, automatically it's going to get promoted as the latest version serving the request. But sometimes we don't want to happen, we don't want this to happen, so we'll just deploy it. We wanted to quietly test it out. If everything is good, we will then promote it. We can promote it. So in that case, if you were to do something of that sort, what you can do is you can use a flag called as No promote. Let me just see the cheat sheet which I just shared with you. So you can use something like this. Don't promote this. Let the production version, which is Hello World app engine, Hello World from GAE standard. Let that be the production version serving. But we'll deploy a version 2, but we'll silently test it out. So let me show you how do I do that. So no promote, and I want this to be done quietly. So let's do this, and it's not going to ask any prompts. So add promote if you want to make this service available for this thing. So by default, it's going to be promote only, but I don't want this to be promoted automatically to serve the request. So I want to silently test it out. Only once file changed, so that file got uploaded basically. Let's wait for this to show up. Let me see how many instance has been there. It is coming down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 are there. You should see a new version, which is version 1, something like that. Okay. In 60 seconds, it has been deployed. Now, if I go to my versions in my app engine, what you will see is 2 versions. But the important thing is it is having 0 traffic. So nobody has accessed it. That's one thing. It's having 0 traffic, and it is there should be something. Yeah, this is going to serve the 100% of traffic. This is not going to serve anything. But can I still test it out? Is a question which many people will ask. So yes, you can test it out. You just click on this link. It's going to have a option like this. What is your version hyphen dot hyphen your project ID? So you are going to have a new URL altogether, folks, which nobody will know because your versioning naming convention, nobody will know. Now you test it quietly. You test it quietly, everything is working fine. That too in the production project, you see everything is good. Now once you get a go ahead, or this could be something like a smoke testing. Once everything is deployed and you wanted to see is it working fine or not. Once it is working fine, what you can do is, if I just refresh it, one instance would be there because I just hit a request. To serve this, one instance should have been provisioned. So if I just go to my here, you see there's one instance serving. To serve this page, one is running. So I tested it. Everything is working fine. Now, what will you do? Uh, you're still not comfortable. Everything is good. This situation will occur, right? So everything is good, but somewhere there's some one place or a corner where you feel maybe the application can break. So let's not take any risk. Why don't we do a small canary deployment? So what do you mean by a canary deployment? So you wanted to see is there any early warnings from your system, and if you make this as production, version 2 as production, and if it breaks, you are going to lose reputation, all those things. So instead of that, you don't want to take a risk. So what you wanted to do is you wanted to have only 1% or 5% of the traffic going to version 2, 99.95% going to the stable version. So now 5%, any errors, you can look into the errors, all those things easily by looking at the logs. So if there's no error, then promote it as 100%. So you are going to do a canary deployment, and the word canary comes from mining industry. The word canary actually is a bird's name. This bird has a capability of detecting early warnings. So usually the miners take this bird to the mining place. KFC movie, if you have seen it. So there, the bird, if there's a collapse or anything or calamity happening, the bird will give a signal. So it will make a sound. So that is going to be used by the miners to evacuate that place. So similarly here also, you do this deployment, you get a uh, basically a early volume, okay, whether this is stable or unstable, so that you can switch your traffic there. So how do I do that? Basically, so I can split this traffic. I use this option of split traffic, where you decide the percentage, how much percentage you want to give. So, and you can split the traffic by different options, split by IP address. So basically, this is going to be helpful if you want to launch it only to a specific country. So this kind of an IP address logic is going to work. And for this, you have to write little code extra in your code, where if the IP is in this range, uh, only allow serve this, something of that sort. Uh, or cookie base, which is going to be kept. So if I just mouse over, diversion based on applying the modus to fingerprinting. Okay, this is not okay. You don't need to do any change in the code. So not change in the code required. So you can handle it. Cookie based, so this is something where it's going to create a cookie on the client machine. So my machine is going to be my client machine when I'm hitting this request, or a random logic to do this splitting basically. So you have three different ways of splitting your traffic. So if I use IP based, because I have only one laptop, it's going to show only one IP. So it will not work for me. So cookie, I have never tried it, but random thing is something which works. I have seen it working easily. So we are going to put the logic, the split traffic logic by randomness. So what I'm going to say is version 1 is there, version 2 also. So if I make 5%, we may rarely see version 1 content. So you may say we are already seeing version 1 content, Mahesh. No, the reason is the URL is different. Every version when you deploy in GAE, it's going to have a URL, but that is not going to be a main URL. The main URL is basically learn GCP PCA batch 6. That is your main URL. This is having something like version hyphen dot. Nobody can use that, right? It's with something in production. So if I do and 5%, it's going to be difficult for us to see whether it's really working or not. So for the simplicity reason, I'm going to make a 50-50 kind of a stuff. So see whether it's really going to work or not. So it's going to be something like a round robin. First request goes to version 1, second request is going to version 2, kind of a stuff. So sometimes people call kind of testing also as A/B testing. So one version is called as A, the second version is called as B. Which version is going to generate more revenue usually? So the split is done. Now if I go to my versions, you see 50-50 is going to be served. 50-50. Now please use your application, the link which I've already sent. Let me just send it one more time. If I now refresh it, first time it's going to show standard. Second time when I refresh it, standard version 2 is what it's going to show. Let me just refresh it. Version 2, version 1. So you see that split in the traffic, folks. Hope you are also able to see it. Two different versions. So usually they also sometimes call, if you do 50-50, basically you are A/B testing. So if I keep a button on my left, more people are going to click on it, or if I keep a button on my right, more people are going to click on it. So you will be able to see this kind of an A/B testing or traffic splitting easily. And you did not do anything, folks. Everything was fully managed. It was just a click of a button. Now you tested it, did A/B testing, or now you are now confident 50% of the traffic, no errors, everything working fine. What will you do? Let's promote it. Let's promote version 2 as the latest one. So how do I do it? Select this, migrate the traffic. So all the requests will be immediately migrated to this version. This may cause latency for large applications. So you can also enable warm-up requesting for gradual drops. So you can do some extra backend work, so work tasks, so that latency can be reduced. So ours is a simple one. So if I just click on migrate, all the 100% traffic is going to be served from version 2. So let me just show you, refresh the screen. Now you see this, it's 100%. Now if I just go and refresh it n number of times, it's always going to be version 2 only. It will never show version 1 because we have migrated it. Everything that is a current version which is running. So this is your traffic split. So what is that warm up? What we need to do? So some configuration in your app.yaml is what you need to do, Anil B. So that you can do certain little bit warm up. So maybe have 1 or 2 instance running already. So something of that sort, so that you don't see that latency. And since we already had 1 or 2 instances, so we did not see much latency also in our case. So now, and never ever get confused with this instance, folks. Currently, even though this is 100% served, only one instance is enough. Reason is no much traffic. And your previous version, there was a load testing which you did. So it had scaled up to 16 plus instances. Now it is slowly scaling down from 16 to 4. In next few minutes, if you just see, you will see it's going to become 1. After some times, it's going to become 0 also, basically. So now what we have seen is new version deployment, auto scaling feature, and also we saw canary kind of a deployment, canary deployment with the help of split traffic. And once we did the testing, we also did move to the latest version using migrate traffic option. So those are stuffs which we have seen now. And whatever you did was only one service, folks. This is one service, and the name of service is default. And this default service had 2 versions. Now I told you can have multiple microservices. So how can I have multiple microservices? Simple. You get the code and just deploy it in such a way that it's going to create a new version. So let me just show you how it looks like. So for that, let me go to my app engine. So here, uh, what I'll do is this existing code only, right? Just pretend as if this is a different microservice. So for that, I'm just going to change the same code. Uh, this is a middle tier microservice. This is my content. Now, to make this as a new version, I have to edit this file. I have to add an attribute or a configuration called as service. If you don't mention the service, it's going to be default. So if you mention the service, it's going to be a new service altogether, a microservice. So I'm going to call this as middle tier. That's it. To Vivek's this thing, this is how you do it. So you just edit the app.yaml, create a service with the name of your choice. That's it. When you save this and deploy it, what's going to happen basically is under your services, you'll have a new entry called as middle tier, and it may have only one version. First time when you're doing, it's going to be one version only. So let's try to do it. So let me just deploy this gcloud app deploy -v. I always do this so that I keep track of it. Version 1 quietly. Okay, I cannot use underscore. No, this is This is not required. So it's okay. That three spaces will come when you have extra configuration, but it was only a main attribute. So you did not need to add three spaces. So for example, I'll show you one example, Mangesh. Once I do the deployment. So maybe I can just show you here itself. If I go to my versions, if I click on the this thing, you see this. This is the main attributes. So, but your attributes under a specific configuration under handler still follows the three spaces. Handler is the main one. So then you will have three this thing. So similarly, this minimum idle instance. So this is the configuration under auto scaling. So auto scaling is the main configuration. So again, the three letters stuff comes. What we have added is a main configuration. So I did not use that three spaces. Makes sense, Mangesh? It was a main configuration. So something like runtime, environment, handler, auto scaling kind of a configuration. So that's where the three spaces is not required. But under services, what if you use three spaces? It's not going to recognize as a configuration. It's going to throw an error. That's a main configuration. Now my app has been deployed. Now it says you can see a URL something like this. What is the format you see? The service name hyphen dot hyphen your project id dot appspot.com. Now you can access it via this URL only. If you access it, you will see totally a new response. Oh, sorry, just add calm towards the end, folks. Oh, sorry. How can it go to that? Okay, so just add. Okay, let me just put it in the chat. No, 1 minute. Use this link. So I mentioned the com was not mentioned. Uh, M was not mentioned. So now you should see this. This is your middle tier. So this is your middle tier. Uh, if I go to my services, you see two services, folks, two microservices. The first one, the default is going to be a main front end facing application. Then there could be n number of microservices which could be used by basically this main service to render it. So basically, these microservices are going to be used in your default stuff. So this is going to be done by the developers. So for example, assume for a minute, this is something like getting some user profile microservice in an e-commerce website. So there's going to be a dedicated written in a specific language. It's going to hit the database and get it and get the response in something like JSON or XML format. That is going to be consumed by your main app and show it. So the way they put it in the code is in the main application, this should be the code. This is my microservice URL, put it. They are going to access. So it's going to be basically using HTTP or HTTPS URL only, basically. So this is how you can have multiple services or microservices deployed in the same app engine. So basically prefer to go with more microservice based architectures uh, so that they can have n number of microservices and you can deploy it in app engine itself. One app engine is good enough. So hope Vivek, this answers your question about how you can have multiple microservices. So you just need to add that word, that's it. So, and if it's in Java, if it's in Python, the syntax is going to be slightly different. But basically you add an entry to your app.yaml file. That's it. So slightly the syntax is going to vary. So that syntax stuff, you can get it from the documentation. So now if we come to this diagram, it should be more self-explanatory now. So app is the app engine. Then you have services. Inside the service, each service can have multiple versions. Those versions can have few instances running, basically. So, and the usual way you access it is going to be something like the version ID hyphen dot hyphen service hyphen dot hyphen project ID dot appspot.com. So this is how you access it basically. And the beauty of App Engine is uh, if you have deployed something in Kubernetes engine or in Compute engine, there was some previous older version which was working fine. Now you have upgraded to a newer version. Uh, all of a sudden, the manager comes and says, "There was that older version. There was a button here on the left hand corner. That was really good. Can we get it back? Can I see that older version now?" It's going to be difficult in in Kubernetes engine and in your compute engine because that version is not even running. You have overridden it. But in app engine, right, you will have all the versions unless you explicitly delete it. So every version is going to have a URL. At any point of time, somebody comes and asks, "Can I see the older version? I want to reference it for something." You can just give them the URL. It's going to work very easily. So that's the beauty of App Engine there. There's one question. App Engine standard is only for internet facing, not for internal facing, as there is no control over network. You can use it for internal facing also. It's basically you need to just add an authentication layer here. So you just add an it's web based, it's accessible on internet, but you add a authentication layer like a single sign-on page something, Vivek. Then it could be used for internal. Now instead of when I give you the link, it did not ask you to log in. Now I add a layer of authentication, then I can use it for internal stuff also. So that is something which I can use. So it's not that it is always for internet facing. It could be used for internal also. So internal facing also with your network, with your authentication. So there's something called as identity aware proxy, which we will talk at a later point of time. So with that, you should be able to do it. Show the multiple versions, all those things. Now, one small observation, you cannot, you can delete your other services. You can delete your other services. It gets deleted, but your default service cannot be deleted. Default service cannot be deleted. So if my app is writing some data into DB, will App Engine be useful in that scenario? Yes, you have a front end which is going to be written in App Engine, and when you write something, it's going to commit it into a Google into a database. That is possible. We are going to see a similar demo in our database class in your module 4, where we are going to revisit App Engine, where you will see a stateful application. Now this is a stateless application. So we'll see a stateful application at that stage, Mangesh. So because we have not explored database, once we are exploring database, we will see that. So I cannot delete default service. The selection contains default service, you cannot delete it. So default service has to always exist. Similarly, if you want to remove older versions which you don't want to use, now you see folks, it has scaled down from 16 to 7 to 4 to 1. So if you feel I don't want this version anymore, nobody's going to use it, you can just leave it. After a day, it's going to scale down to 0. But if you don't want that any entry itself to avoid any confusion, you can delete it. You can delete it. But the main version, you cannot delete it because this is serving the traffic. This is serving the traffic. The version, you cannot delete it. So the main version which is serving, you cannot delete it. But the older versions, you can delete it. Now assume there is one instance running. It's going to scale down after some time, but you feel no, I don't want any instance to run currently. Then what you cannot delete the version because this version is tied to what is the code, right? So you cannot delete it, and that it is currently serving the traffic. So what you can do is you can do something like this. Version 1, nothing is there. Version 2, which is serving 100% traffic, there is one instance. This instance I can go and delete it. The instance I can delete it. Now if somebody hits a request once more, a new instance is going to be provisioned. A new instance is going to be provisioned. So these are the stuffs which you can do, and you cannot stop or do anything when it comes to App Engine standard. Basically, you can. This is going to become 0 in the next few minutes. It's going to get updated. So you can do all the stuffs when it comes to App Engine, basically, and we did everything without a network. That was the beauty of it, and it was so very fast. It was very very fast when it came to trying it all those features. So any questions till now, folks, on App Engine? And we saw this traffic splitting, all those things. So any questions so far?
My one small question. So if you
Yeah.
say we do not have any traffic and we're not using any network here. So for example, if my application uh, wanted to run only in US and UK, but do not want to run in Hong Kong because of the whatever the norms we have with Hong Kong and
Mm-hmm.
China, they do not want to use GCP. So if
Mm-hmm.
those customers should not be using it, so then in that cases, how the traffic will go?
So you want to control the traffic. So what you can do at this time, like you, so if somebody from those countries log in, you should say like bad gateway or something, like something, some error message is
Yes.
what you wanted to show. Yeah. So if you want to do something of that sort, then you have to use a product called as Cloud Armor. So you have to use a product which we have not yet come to that. So that's under networking. So you can put that, it's like layer 7 firewall rule which you're going to put. So with these IPs, so if IP's request is coming from Hong Kong, there's going to be a specific IP. So we know that IP, we can get that IP range, put that in a product called as Cloud Armor that comes under networking. So network security, Cloud Armor. So here you can put that list. So that's one option of restricting it. Only so if somebody from that IP range requests this application, it's going to show bad gateway or access denied, something of that sort of an error. 5xx error or 4xx error, basically. Hope that answers your question, Kumar.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. A/B testing is two versions of the app. What UI you showed? Yes, basically A/B testing, like assume this button, save button. If the save button is at the bottom, people will click. If the save button is at the top, people will click it. So A version, B version, something of that sort. So usually marketing people try to do this to see whether where, because if you see most of the human eye focuses towards right hand side. Left side, people don't keep more buttons when it comes to UI. So you can use this traffic splitting. If it's 50-50, it's going to be usually for A/B testing. If it is like 90-10% or 80-20%, it is to do a canary deployment. So that is where you can use the same feature. You use it for two use cases: A/B testing and for canary deployment. So traffic splitting is a feature which we saw, and you can split it by multiple options: IP based, cookie based, and random. Random we choose because it's going to be easy for us to test it out. If I use IP, it's going to be my same IP. It will not show me the newer version. So this is your traffic splitting. There's a high chance this question could be asked. You want to try two versions without shutting it down, all those things. So you can do it. So traffic splitting is going to help you out. Now let's move to the next sub-component, App Engine Flexible. So assume my requirement was, I'll before the break, right? We'll deploy it and then go, because the deployment takes longer time. So the deployment takes longer time, so we'll use that time to do it. Uh, so if this is a requirement, I want Node.js 8. I want Node.js 8 to run. I have an application which is running in Node.js. Uh, it's not so legacy, but Node.js is not supported in App Engine standard. So when you see that, right, basically the only option which you can do is, and there's no developers to change it to Node.js 10 or something. What I will do is basically go with flexible instance, App Engine flexible. So you can bring any runtime, as long as it can run in a containerized form, you should not have any issues. So Google is going to do a containerization for you behind the scene, but it should be something which can be containerized and which can get deployed. So if that is the kind of stuff, you can usually use App Engine flexible. So let's try to use the same hello world example, but a different runtime which is not supported by App Engine standard. So Node.js 8 is what we are going to deploy, and this deployment is going to take around 10 minutes, folks. So we can use that time for our break also. Let me just start the deployment and then we'll go for a break. Now let me just open up my Cloud Shell. Now this is the code. This is the code. Same stuff, 7 lines of code. Only thing is that the message is hello world from flexible. What is the package or JSON mentioning? Here it is explicitly mentioning I want 8 version specifically. 8 version is what it's expecting, and 8 is not supported in standard environment. So you have to explicitly mention the environment is flexible in your app.yaml file. So this is what you need to mention basically. Runtime, it's just Node.js. You don't need to mention any specific version because that's going to be mentioned in your package.json. So environment needs to be flexible. And one important thing is when it comes to App Engine flexible, it expects a network, folks. Without a network, it's not going to work. Without a network, it's not going to work. I'll show you that demonstration. And by default, it's going to create 2 instances. We did what we saw was auto scaling feature in the App Engine standard environment. So there's also a feature called as manual scaling. Manual scaling where you can manually scale it based on your requirement. So when you want manual scaling, by default, it's going to be 2 if you turn on manual scaling for redundancy purpose. But to save some cost, I have made it as 1. I have made it as 1. So this is the configuration which we have. This line is only to highlight App Engine flexible requires network. If you don't mention, if you don't mention this entry itself, right? It's going to look for the default network. If it is there, it's going to use it. Basically, if you have some custom network created, you can use this configuration to use that part. But the key part is it requires a network. It requires a network. So meaning since we don't have a network, if we try to get it, run it, it's going to throw us an error. Let's see what is going to happen. So gcloud app deploy -1 flex -q. Let's run it and see what's going to happen. Or let me just, I should have put a time. Okay. Let's see whether it is going to throw us the error quickly, saying that there's no, you see, basically it is building behind the scene a image, folks. Dockerization. It creates a Docker file for you automatically. So building an image, kind of a message. Pulling image. So basically it creates a Docker file for you automatically. You don't need to write a Docker file. It creates a Docker file automatically for you. So I should have put time in front of it. Anyway, it's going to fail. The reason is there's no network. But we'll verify it whether it really requires a network or not. So or I'll just close this. So I'll just close this for a minute, folks. I'll just close this. Interrupted. So I'll just make a backup of this file. Uh, BK text file. What I'll do? Oh, sorry. BK. So if I just do, I'll just remove these lines. I made it XML. Sure, I'll do it. No problem. YAML. So if I see the content, this is the thing. So no network mentioned. So flexible. That's it. Let me just run this build process one more time. Flexible. I'll just mention it as 2 just to avoid any confusion. Anyway, time is put. Let's hit and let's wait for it to show. And anyway, it's going to take some time. Behind the scene, it uses Dockerization. So it creates a Docker file, everything for us behind the scene. That's where you see building and pushing an image for the service, all those details, which is going to again use cloud build, all those things behind the scene. So let's just leave the screen as is. I don't have a VPC and I have not mentioned any VPC details in my file also. So what it's going to show is at the end, it's going to show there's no network, I cannot create it. It's what it's going to show, but after some time. Okay, so it's going to take around 5 minutes or 7 minutes sometimes. So let's take a break and come back. Once we come back, we should look for the error message. So take a break and come back. Let me stop the recording.
This conference will now be recorded.
So before the break, we just deployed our app engine, and in 1 minute 26 seconds, it shows network default does not exist. Then it cannot create is what it indicates. So this is a very clear indication. It relies on network. It relies on the network. So not like your app engine standard. So let me just go ahead and create a network. Create a network. And I don't need to do anything extra. Just give the name as default. Everything is going to be created automatically. We'll talk more on networking at a later point of time. Default, and let it create something called as automatic subnet mode and some firewall rules. This is what I'm just replicating what was there before. These are the steps which have to be done. So that's it. Create a VPC. Once the VPC is created, I should be able to rerun the same stuff. It should work. It should work. First, let me create the VPC. Yes, the VPC is there. Now what I will do is clear the screen, just show you the configuration one more time, app.yaml. No network details have been mentioned, but this time when I run it, it's going to work, but it's going to take time. It's going to take around minimum 5 minutes. The highest computer which took the highest time to get deployed is this, and this is not going to be acceptable uh, because for 7 lines of code only, if you are taking a longer time to deploy, uh, how about a real application? My own experience, where an application I was trying to deploy a full-fledged application, web application on App Engine Flexible. It took me 30 minutes, folks. It took me 30 minutes. And the worst part was after 30 minutes, it threw me an error. So I had to fix it and again had to spend 30 more minutes. So that was the worst part, I would say, when it comes to App Engine Flexible. And why it takes this longer time? Because you have not written a Docker file. It understands your stuff, creates a Docker file for you, all those things. So that's one of the reasons why it works or takes longer time to deploy. Anyway, we have put time in front of it. You should be able to see how long it takes. So only because it takes longer time, they themselves are mentioning, you see, it is going to take several minutes. Definitely it is going to be several minutes only. uh, uh, and this is one of the main reasons why many developers avoid App Engine Flexible. The only advantage which you get with Flexible is any legacy application you can run it in App Engine. Basically, platform as a service, you don't need to worry much all about things. That's the only advantage. Apart from that, it's going to be very difficult to deploy, because usually developers expect fastness. Usually developers, the moment they write the code, they want to deploy it and see whether it's working. In Compute Engine, Kubernetes Engine, and App Engine Standard, it was so fast. We saw that. But in Flexible, you're going to wait for at least 5 minutes for 7 lines of code. If it's like huge amount of code, 30 minutes easily, 1 hour sometimes. So that's one of the reasons people avoid Flexible instance. Then you may ask, so if Flexible instance is not going to be that helpful, but I still have a legacy application, what will I do? There's a solution which Google has uh, launched 1.5 years back. Now it's close to 2 years, called as Cloud Run, where any legacy application, if you want to containerize it and run it as a web-based application, you get that option, and it's going to be a little faster there when you want to deploy it. So let's look into that also, but let's leave the screen as is to get a confirmation how long it takes for a 7 lines of code to get deployed in Flexible instance. Everything was same. Only thing is that you change the runtime from 10 to 8, downgraded it, and you're trying because it's Node.js 8, so it does not have basically a standard support, App Engine standard support. So it's going to take time to come up. By the time that comes up, let's go back to our slides. Uh, let's go back to our slides and look into when should you use for App Engine, when not to use App Engine. So if it's a database, I want to host in data in GCP, App Engine is not a good choice. App Engine is always a fit for a web focused application. It could be a website, it could be a web API, an API basically. So which is going to give you a response something like in a JSON format or in an XML format. Maybe I can just show you a small web API deployed in App Engine. What you saw was a website, folks. So I'll show you how a web API looks in next few minutes after we deploy App Engine Flexible. So this is only for web focused, nothing else. Simple. Never ever think of deploying a database in App Engine standard. It is not going to work. Second use case when you can use App Engine, if you have any legacy web application, running any runtime, you want to run it easily in GCP without writing a Docker file. Google is going to create a Docker file, containers, everything for you. But if there's no license restriction, nothing, homegrown application but legacy, App Engine Flexible is going to be a good choice. So web application legacy can be containerized, but you don't know the skills. You don't have the skills to containerize it. App Engine Flexible is a good choice. Then you have websites which is with low traffic websites, like the admin portal kind of a stuff. App Engine Standard is a good choice because it scales down to 0. App Engine Flexible scales down to 1 basically. So that's the importance there. So let's wait for the App Engine Flexible to get deployed. Then we'll conclude this part. So, but these are the places where you can use App Engine. It has to be web focused, nothing else. So let's see whether it is done. It is still taking time. So it's almost close. Uh, okay. This is your flexible instance, folks. 5 minutes. And I guess we are fortunate enough. I have seen in another batch, it took around 8 minutes. So 5 minutes it took to just deploy 7 lines of code. Not acceptable if you ask me. And you see the feature of scale down feature, or if there's no traffic, still you will have one instance. Flex 2, that was the name which we gave, right? So I didn't even send a request yet, but already one instance is running. This is what you expect usually in a normal virtual machine world, right? That is what you see. So it's a managed VM basically. I can also log into that VM and show you. So this requires your default VPC. A network should be there. Instance is already there. What is the URL? Same URL, folks. If you want to use, just use this command. It's going to give you the URL. Learn GCP batch 6 appspot.com. So if I click on it, same link which I had already sent you. Now the response is going to come from where? From your App Engine flexible stuff. Now this is already having a VM running. So where can I see that VM? If you wanted to know that, just go to your App Engine, instances. But before the instances, let me show you the versions. You see this, folks? Version 2 was standard. Flex, another version you have deployed, which is in the default service only. This is in the default service only. It is flexible. Now, if you look into the configuration, comparing the both of them, you will see Node.js flexible. You get the, okay, it does not mention any network details here. The network is going to be default. That's what we confirmed by doing that demo. And here, when you click on the standard version, it's going to show the environment is standard. So now, the important thing is when it comes to flexible, go to your instances page. You'll see a VM like this. The most important thing is it has a public IP address. It also has a SSH button, meaning I can log into the VM and see where my code was deployed. So let's just log in, folks. So and you will see some funny things when you go inside it. Because it was containerized, definitely it should be having a Docker runtime running. So we are logged in into our flexible instance virtual machine. Docker -- version. So so-called version is installed. The latest 20 is the latest version. So it's so-called latest container optimized OS. Node.js. What's the version would you expect, folks? Node version. What do you expect here as output? It's in container optimized OS. Nothing is going to be there. No node version running because it's containerized, right? So this is your host operating system. So host will not even have it. So now to know my web application running, so I'm going to do Docker process. This is my app, Flex 2. So you need to log into this interactively. Then you will be able to see it. The prompt changes. Now, if I put ls, I see my files. I see my files uploaded. Now, if I do Node.js -- version, what is the version would you expect? Oh, 8 is the version you would expect. Okay, so it's the same concept when you learned containerization and when you deployed it on a virtual machine. It's the same concept used here. So the stuffs which we learned are getting used again. So that is the main part. What you learn should be useful. Otherwise, it's of no use. So this is the stuff, folks. Now, more load you put, it's not going to scale up automatically because we have turned it as manual scaling. So you can also run in automatic scaling if you want. And one biggest advantage, right? Many time uh, scale down to zero may look very attractive because no instances, zero cost. But what you will see this in reality is you will have a cold startup. So you'll have a cold startup, meaning no instance is there. So assume nothing is there and something is already running. So which is going to serve the request fastest? The one which is already having an instance, right? So you'll have a slight cold startup time. So if the customer is okay, App Engine standard is going to be good. But if the customer says no, I should not have a cold startup, then you have to use something like App Engine flexible to have at least minimum one. And per my understanding, there's no setting in App Engine standard which is going to make it always minimum one. So App Engine standard also has some limitations, like you cannot make minimum one always running. It is going to scale down to zero automatically if there's no traffic. Uh, then not every runtime versions are supported, and there are going to be little constraints there. But with flexible, you get that flexibility, but takes longer a time. So doesn't it look like uh, if it could be a mixture of both, then it could be an awesome solution. So that's where the Cloud Run comes handy, folks. So before we go to Cloud Run, right, I just wanted to show you. So all this stuffs which you are seeing is a website. Not a great website, but a simple, very basic website. Let me show you how a web API looks like. Okay, so let me just deploy one small web API and then we'll wind it up. So I have a service called as order service. Order service. If I show you the code, again it's Node.js. Will not go too much details into the code. Basically, it is going to have a JSON file which is having some order details. It's going to when I just send a request with the name /API/orders, it's going to give me the details of that order, complete stuffs. It's a get request. Similarly, if I specify an ID, it's going to give that specific ID information and show me. Basically, a get request is what I'm doing. So I don't have a database, but I am keeping everything in this folder called as data. So this is the order.json file. So this is a JSON file. This I wanted to pull it in a program, in a API form. That is what I'm trying to do. Usually this will be kept in a database. I don't have a database. I'm using a lightweight version. So this API, how do I convert this into an app engine? Simple. Add this app.yaml file entry, and we'll create this as a service, a microservice. Now, how to deploy it? Now you already know it. Gcloud app deploy minus version orders version 1 minus q quietly and time, because I have not mentioned the this thing. What is that? Environment. It's going to try to deploy it in standard environment, and Node.js 10 is supported, so definitely it's going to work without any issue. Before I do this, I wanted to delete my VPC, folks. So I want to delete this VPC. There's a question. Let me just answer it once I do this part. because we are going to deploy an App Engine standard environment, I want to make it again without a network to work. And the next few demos which we are going to do is also okay. Oh, I have to delete that. Okay. Now, what is this error, folks? Any idea? What does this error indicate? Or maybe if it's not visible, let me show it here. What does this error indicates? Flexible network needs to be deleted. Yes, the flexible instance which you created, that is still running, so you cannot delete it. So you have to undelete it. You have to, then only you can do it. So if you go back to your flexible instance, this instance is using that network. So I have to delete this. I have to delete this. Only then it's going to work. So I'll delete this later. So what I will do now is simply deploy it and show you how a web API can. Uh, okay, underscore cannot be used. Hyphen. So I'm going to deploy a newer version here. Um, a newer microservice, newer version, all those things. Now, by the time it comes up, there's a question from Vivek. GAE standard scales down to 0. So if a sudden request comes in bulk, how the GAE manages? Does it have any queuing mechanism so that the request isn't lost until the instance comes up? You can have it. You have those kinds of options. Task queues are there already, so you can use that option. So if you just go here, you see this task queue option. So you can use that. For my understanding, it's going to scale up very quick, so it's not going to happen that you're going to lose any request. So but if you want to have that kind of a queuing mechanism, there is a feature which you can use, Vivek. You have that feature option already. So let's wait for this thing to come up and hope it is answered. Your question is answered, Vivek. You have the task queue feature already there. And we have not discussed it into details. The reason is this is going to become more developer focused one. So how they manage the queues, all those things. Now we have an app running. Now let me just go and access it. API, if I just use like this directly, it's going to show. Now this is not a website. This is not a website. It's going to show cannot do anything because it's an API. So, and the way I access this is they have defined that in the code. It has to be accessed like this. This is how it's going to be accessed. Now I see a, if I just put this in the chat. So if you're using Chrome browser with no extensions, you will see something like this, raw. But if you use Firefox, or if you have installed a JSON formatter in your Chrome OS, sorry, Chrome browser, you will see a format like this, folks. This is your web API, which is going to give a response. So you pass an ID. How do I pass the ID? So ID, okay, this is the ID. I pass an ID. It's going to show only that ID. So this is not a website, an API. Somebody should use this and make it as a beautiful application. So hope this makes sense, folks. When to use App Engine, when not to use App Engine. Is that clear, folks? By any, if there's any question, let me know. So if I just go to my versions now, I should see basically in default version, service, I see 2 entries. In my orders service, I see 1 version running basically. So one note was there was for low traffic. Yeah, if it's a low traffic website, meaning sometimes it will nobody's going to hit it. So why do you want to keep it running? So make it purposely deployed on App Engine standard. Even if it requires some effort, I would suggest to do it on App Engine standard because it scales down to 0. But if it's a website which is always going to have at least 30 or like something like 100 requests every second, running it in App Engine flexible is okay, because anyway you're going to run one instance if you are in flexible, so you can utilize it. But if there's no traffic, basically low traffic website, the best fit is always App Engine standard. Hope that answers your question, Mangesh. Okay. uh, Now we saw the slowness, all those things. To address that slowness, the product which we are going to focus now is Cloud Run, the next compute option. So which is basically a combination of Kubernetes features, combination of App Engine standard features merged together. So basically called as Cloud Run. In 2019 Google Next event it was launched. It's generally available now. uh, I see a potential future for Cloud Run, and it may look like just a prediction. That's it. Going forward, uh, people who use App Engine may start using Cloud Run heavily, and there could be a chance that Cloud App Engine can be end of life. It can happen because it's almost like 13 years old product now. It has to retire at some point of time. Maybe Google may retire it at a later point of time. There are articles in the internet, in if you just go to a Medium post and search for something, not an official one, people have speculated and they have given their thoughts. So App Engine, now you may ask, my and what we read for the last 2 hours is waste. At least for your exam it's going to be helpful. uh, if you're going to work for an organization who already has App Engine deployed, for that it could be helpful. So but Cloud Run has a future, is what I feel. The only reason is it's very modern. It can also scale down to 0. So all the best features of your App Engine, you will see it. All the best features of your Kubernetes or containerization, you will see it. So that's on Cloud Run. Before we go to Cloud Run, anytime whenever we work on any resource, we used to dismantle it, right? When we learned Kubernetes, we dismantled the Kubernetes cluster. Whenever we did MIG, we dismantle the load balancer, MIG, all those things. Why don't we dismantle App Engine also? Okay. Once we dismantle it, we'll come back to our Cloud Run and continue it. So let me just go and go to my App Engine. You will not have any options to basically stop it, all those things. So it's a slightly a weird service, I would say. So delete your services which you don't need it. This is one way. You do one by one and fix it. And if you feel no, this is going to be a little difficult for me to handle which service to delete, all those things, simply directly go to your settings and disable this disable the application, so that nobody is going to use App Engine itself. So this is one way you can do it. If you were to do manually delete certain stuffs, you can do that. But my strong recommendation is, don't leave your project with uh, flexible instance running and do it. um, you can disable the API also. That's not a problem. So that is also okay. But if you want to do only the app, because anyway it is there in the application side itself, right? So I thought you can use this option, disable the application. This is going to be one option. Or if you want to disable the API, you can disable the API also. So go to your APIs library. Admin API, flexible environment. Two things are there. So two things are there. You want to disable both. Instead of that, maybe the easiest one is just go to settings, disable this one. And please don't forget to disable this. And I usually do the last demo in App Engine is the flexible one, just to show you the slowness. If you just leave it as flexible, right? Flexible has a different pricing model, and standard has a different pricing model. So flexible is going to be charged as your VM cost, and it's going to be little expensive, folks. And your standard is going to have a free tier also. So there's a quota limit. Only when you exceed that quota, you will be charged. So flexible is expensive, standard is cheaper. So, and if you just leave your 100%, the main traffic served from flexible, you are going to be charged heavily. So always, because you are going to use a free trial account, so avoid that cost by disabling your application. When we need it, we'll enable it. But for now, till our storage class comes, we are not going to look into App Engine again. So I'm going to disable this. The API, you have to disable two APIs. Instead of that, you can just disable this application. So that's going to be easier option. So done, we have dismantled it. It's not a real dismantling, but we are just disabled the application. The App Engine has been disabled. Now let's go to our slides. Any questions before I move to Cloud Run, folks? Any questions? All right. So Cloud Run, I was not able to get a equivalent of Azure. If somebody has worked on the equivalent of Azure, of Cloud Run in Azure, please let me know. I was not able to get one actually. But in AWS, it is called as Fargate. So Cloud Run equivalent of that is Fargate, AWS Fargate. What is Cloud Run actually? So let's try to visualize this. App Engine Flexible. What is the best part of App Engine Flexible? Bring any runtime. I'm going to deploy you in a platform as a service. That was the best feature. But what was the bad feature or the drawbacks of it? It was taking longer time to deploy. Then uh, that slowness was there. What was the best feature of standard environment? And another drawback of flexible was it was scaling to only one instance. It was never scaling down to zero. So, but when it comes to standard, it can scale down to zero, but it has the limitations of your run times. When it comes to, so a combination is basically your Cloud Run. So it is basically in 4 words, if I were to explain it: serverless for containerized web applications. Serverless for containerized web applications is the key part here. So you're still going to deploy web applications only, but these are going to be containerized, serverless containerized applications. So runs stateless containers, and this is again serverless. You can bring any runtime of your choice: Perl, Lua, any version of your Python, anything. But the only thing is that when you are doing something in Cloud Run, basically you should have a Docker file written. That is the only thing. So you need to know how to write a Docker file. The remaining application code is going to be the same. So you should know how to write a Docker file. So that's going to be a little learning which somebody should have it. So same, the dependency management, everything is going to be there. But additional to what you did in App Engine, you need to have a Docker file. So uh, that is the key part with Cloud Run. So any web application, if it can be containerized, you can run it in Cloud Run, and you are going to get a very similar experience, fastness, so fast to deploy it. Okay, so Aman, hope your question is answered. Version dependency with App Engine was there. uh, that package.json, you are going to also have the same thing here also, but you are going to add one more configuration. You are not going to have app.yaml, but you are going to have a Docker file.
So Mahesh, when we say serverless, what does it mean actually? So we
You
don't
don't
need
need to
some.
manage. You don't need to manage anything with respect to your infrastructure basically. So the cloud provider is going to manage it for you. Now, for example, App Engine standard is serverless. It did not
But
require you to have a network also. But when it comes to App Engine Flexible, you need to have a network. You need to manage the firewall rules. You need to mention what is the configuration, all those things. So that's basically serverless.
I'm sorry,
Hope
Mahesh.
that
See, that
answers.
one in the App Engine standard also, we didn't use any network or anything, right?
Hmm. That is
Only,
serverless.
but that is nothing but a serverless, right?
Yes, you don't have a network also. That's totally serverless. So no network, no firewall rules. No need to mention how many VMs you want. Like for example, in your this thing, right? MIG, you had to mention it. I want SSD disk. I want HDD disk. I want
Yeah.
minimum one, maximum this. Then I have to mention what is the machine type. All those things you have to mention it. So and you had to worry about those things. But when it comes to serverless, you don't need to worry. So serverless web applications, if you were to compute options, then you just focus on your code. That's it. You did not worry about the infra itself. So less worry about infra is where your serverless products comes into picture. But when it comes to your flexible, you need to worry about the infra because you had to create a network. Without that, it was not allowing us to create it. Now, Cloud Run is also going to fall on the same category. You don't need to have a network. You didn't no need to mention anything about the infrastructure. You just deploy your code. It's going to run. So the code should be already in a containerized form, basically. Hope that answers your question, Kumar.
So okay, so then what is the difference between the App Engine standard and Cloud Run? Or it's a additional feature
Cloud
of.
Run will Cloud Run is a merger of the best features of your standard environment, scale down to zero, faster deployment, uh, plus bring any runtime. So the best features of standard and the best features of containerization combination or an hybrid model.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I'll show you the demonstration, then it's going to make it more sense. Basically, it's a hybrid model, I would say, which combines both the best features of all the stuffs which we have learned so far. But the focus is still on web applications only, nothing else. It has to be web, basically. Stateless containers, web applications. So, uh, if I have a requirement to deploy the same web application which we saw so far, the 7 lines of code, but I want to run it in the latest version of Node.js, which is 15.x. So if you just search for Node.js latest, it's going to be 15 dot something. So if you were to run that, flexible will be helpful. You can do it, but you need to wait for 5 minutes slowness, and it does not scale down to zero. So you need to have a network. So all those implications are going to be there. If you were to go with standard will throw an error. Node.js 15 is not supported. Now, if you have a situation like this, the best fit which you are going to use is Cloud Run. Let me show you how Cloud Run can deploy the same application in a newer runtime and with fastness, with the capability of scaling down to zero if there's no traffic. So let me just show you that. So for that, let me just try to, because anyway the application is disabled, I see any instances. Okay, nothing is there. At least now I can delete my flexible. Hope I can, sorry, VPC. Let me see whether I can delete my VPC. Uh, Hope I can. No instances are there. Aman, hope your question is answered. So I'll show you how you manage the dependencies. In your app engine, it is package.json. When it comes to Cloud Run, you are going to mention everything in package.json, and also any other further dependencies on the infra part, you are going to mention it in your Docker file also. And you don't need to write a Docker file when you're doing handling with App Engine. hoping for it to get deleted. And the application which you're going to deploy, or the or the web API which you're going to deploy, if it has some specific requirement that I need to have this much of memory, this much of CPU, you tune it. You can tune it in App Engine with those instance class if you prefer to do it. That possibility is there. Similarly, in Cloud Run also you can mention it. But the major infrastructure when it comes to cloud is the network. That itself I don't need to do with Cloud Run and all, and Cloud Run and App Engine standard. The network is deleted, folks. No firewall rules. If no network means no firewall rules. Now, what I will do is go to, I'll not go to Cloud Run. I'll show you how it looks like. It says click create will enable the Cloud Run. So if I click create service, it's going to enable the Cloud Run service. Basically, this is the first time we are coming to Cloud Run in this project. The API is not enabled. So I would always not prefer to start it without the API enabling. So sometimes it will fail, issues will come. So best way is go to your services, API and services, enable your API and come back to the screen. Cloud Run, it's not enabled. So runs stateless HTTP container on a fully managed environment. So run it. Sorry, enable it. Done. If I go to Cloud Run, now it is enabled. So I should be able to deploy it. Now, one way you just click on create service, do all those things. That is one way of doing it. The other way, because this is anyway going to require a container, first let's create a container, push it to GCR, then deploy it. So we'll take the second approach. So for that, I'll go to my Cloud Run folder. So same 7 lines of code. So set NU, same lines, nothing changed here. So only the error welcome message is changed. Welcome to Cloud Run. Now in my Docker file, I'm going to mention the latest version. So what is the latest version? Let me just search for it. Node.js. Latest is 15.11. So let me put that. 15.11 Alpine, why do you need? We know because it's going to create your container image to be to the smallest one. And we wanted to expose 80 port and we want to run node server.js file. That's it. So having the exposure of Docker, writing a Docker file is going to help you here. Now let's just do Docker build, Docker push. That's one way, but I'm lazy. So I'm going to use cloud build submit -t gcr.io/dev shell project id slash cloud run. I'm not going to put a tag, folks. If I don't put tag, what's going to happen? Any idea? I'm not going to put tag. What's going to happen, folks, if I don't put a tag to an image? It's going to be marked as latest. Correct, Mangesh. So it's going to be tagged as latest. So let's see that. Yes, Saman. So it's going to be tagged as latest. So let's build this. It's a small image. It's going to be a little faster. So it does a Docker build and Docker push both. Done, it is pushed. So we know it behind the scene uses a cloud build. Now, if I go to my, okay, let me go to my GCR. That's where the image is pushed, container registry. Cloud run. If I click on it, just now pushed. This is the image, just now, latest pushed. You see this? Because we did not mention, it's going to be tagged as latest. Now, remember, we learned our containerization concept from here only. So we used to click on this. We first tried with GCE. Then we tried our advanced level with GKE. Now we are going to learn to our serverless mode, that's our deploy to cloud run. So by this, we are going to cover all the options here. So let me try to deploy it from here. So deploy to cloud run. When I do this, it's going to go to my cloud run with the image which you are going to from which you are going to click on. So it's already in cloud run screen basically, and I can deploy cloud run in various region. It's a regional resource. Virtual machine is a zonal resource. If you were to make it as a regional one, basically you have to have MIG, regional MIG. Kubernetes can be zonal or regional. App Engine is regional. Cloud Run is also regional. Now, if you cannot remember all these things, towards the end, we are going to create a cheat sheet. So you can keep it as an handy option for your stuff there. So on the last day, we are going to see a cheat sheet there. So which product is which, whether it's regional or zonal or multi-regional, all those things we are going to see it. So it's a regional resource. The closest one for me is going to be Singapore. I'm not sure whether it's going to work in Mumbai if I don't want to take a chance there. So Mumbai. So I can deploy it on a fully managed platform, that is Cloud Run. Or if you say I'll go with Cloud Run for Anthos, what is that? Basically, this is a containerized app, right? To run this, Google is going to have their own managed service. That's your Cloud Run. But if you say no, this is an image. Let me control it. What kind of infra it needs? Then you create a Kubernetes cluster, folks. You create a Kubernetes cluster. In that Kubernetes cluster, you have to turn on Cloud Run for Anthos checkbox. So what they are indicating is go to, so if I just go to Kubernetes, you can run your Cloud Run jobs or Cloud Run standard where you turn on Cloud Run for Anthos. So if I just go here to yes, features, this feature, this is what you need to enable. So when I do it, it basically expects minimum 2 vCPUs. So minimum 2 vCPUs is what is expected. So either you create a cluster, then go and deploy your container on Cloud Run for Anthos, meaning the infra is managed by you in your project. But if you don't want that, you want Google to manage it, then it's going to be truly serverless here. But here when you go, it's not going to be serverless because you are going to manage your cluster, all those things. So, but you have more control. It's your choice which you want to prefer. I would prefer to use Cloud Run because we have already explored Kubernetes concept. Cloud Run, select the region, then give a name to your service. Give a name to your service. Click next. Then it shows your image. What is the image which you wanted to deploy? That's it. Then there are some advanced settings where the port listens on the container port 8080. That's where our stuff listens on. You can mention what is the memory and CPU you can allocate to your Cloud Run. So maximum you can go up to 8 GB and maximum you can have one instance running with 4 vCPU. If you don't want to set it up, just leave it as default. And one container can take 80 requests. One container can take 80 requests. More comes, it's going to scale up to what? Maximum to 100 such instances to handle a huge load, basically. So this is your auto scaling feature. Bounds the number of container instance for your created revisions. You can set a maximum of 1000 container instances. Increase your quota if you need more than 1000 instances. And you see this minimum one, which is minimum zero, sorry, not one, minimum zero, which means a feature very similar to your App Engine standard. And if you see this one, mentioning the Docker image, a feature similar to your App Engine flexible. Both the things are merged here. And if you have issue with cold startup, keep minimum one instance. That's okay. So you get those flexibility very easily. So let me make it a 0. That's it. So what we did, basically from the beginning, we use fully managed platform, which is Cloud Run, not Cloud Run for Anthos. Then we use the specific image of our choice. It needs to be a stateless container, basically a web-based one, and it should be listening on a specific port. Oh, sorry. If I use my mouse, scroll wheel, it changes. What is the capacity? If you want, you can give it. And the auto scaling feature, it shows that. And this having one is going to be a really a benefit, folks. Cold start can be easily avoided there. Next. And there are some new features which is coming. So called as allow internal traffic and traffic from load balancer. So somebody had a question on internal traffic. Can we make it? This is a new feature which you can leverage. You can also attach a load balancer if you want. Allow only internal traffic only. So there are options which you can use. And how you need to get authenticated. So for now, I'm going to make it as allow unauthentication invocation so that everybody can access, all of you can access it. And there's a new feature which has also come. I can add some triggers. When something happens, trigger it. For example, we have not looked into many resources. Okay. So I can enable, okay. So it has to enable this API called as arc event. So there are around 60 plus triggers available. For each services, there is something. So for example, storage is something which we know to some extent. Storage. When I create a bucket, can you send me, call this function or call this um, web API? That's what you are saying. So when this comes, call this. So this trigger events when, so whenever you create a storage bucket, this is going to trigger. So you can do that kind of a stuffs easily here. If you want, you can mention on based on what condition you want to do it. This is slightly a new feature, but let's not explore it. So there are triggers available. So there are
So
triggers on this. Yeah.
are we seeing when we are going to create Cloud Run and some of the trigger we want to happen, some of the work we want to do at the time of creation of Cloud Run, these are the trigger, right? Which will help more
No,
of the
not
start.
when the creation. No. So when you create a bucket, a storage bucket, right? You can call this API. The Cloud Run, which you are going to deploy, this is going to be automatically evoked. One way of evoking it is just hit the web URL, it's going to evoke it. The other way is maybe you have a task. When I create a, say for example, when I create a bucket, I have to do certain task that you want to add it as your Cloud Run
Okay,
capability.
got it.
So
Got it. Yeah, thanks, sir.
yeah,
Thank you much.
this is the very newest feature, I guess. 1 month or 1.5 months old feature. So the trigger peaks. And you will see one more product after this called as cloud functions. It can also do, but it does not have this much sophisticated triggers. So here it has n number of triggers, folks. N number of triggers, 60 plus triggers is what I saw last time when I saw the documentation for every service, and it's going to be based on the log. If a new virtual machine is created, send me call this cloud run and do some activity, maybe a notification, an email notification. You can use that. So that's where this trigger comes handy. So that's it. Let's click on create. It's going to provision us a web application, and we'll also have a URL for it. So it's getting deployed currently, and it's going to be pretty fast. It's going to be pretty fast. It's not going to take 5 minutes or so. Maximum 2 minutes, it should be all there. So I'll show you the first in UI, and I can also show the same demonstration in the terminal also, where we put exactly the time and see it. So should have been passed. Let me just update it. Better could have been done in the terminal, I would say. Okay, let's see what is there any issue? We'll fix it. Minute ago. The traffic. Max 2 minutes should be there. When I mention it is fast, it is slow. Okay. Mm, 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 mm. Okay, fortunately, little faster. Done, folks. So it is done. I'll show you in the terminal also the time it took. Was not 5 minutes, is my shot. So you get a URL, something very similar to your app engine. It's going to end with the domain run.app. So if I just copy it and put it in the chat, I have not even accessed it. If I click on it, it's going to show me that stuff basically. So you get a complete feature of app engine standard, scale down to 0, all those things, a complete feature of your containerization, which is where app engine flexible was really helpful. So, and this feature is not at this capability cannot be executed in app engine standard or flex app engine standard, because 15 is not going to be available. If I tried it with app engine flexible, it's going to take time for me to deploy. So it had both the capabilities and it was able to deploy much faster also. But the only prerequisite is you should know how to write a Docker file. So let me just, and since you have, I can, uh, this URL is there, right? If you want to set up a domain, you can also do that, where you have an option called as custom domain. So you create a custom domain, do a mapping, then it should be fine. So you can also have that. So, but this URL is again HTTPS, a weird URL for testing purpose is going to be helpful. So why don't we do a version, 2 versions, and see how it works. So maybe this site cannot be reached for a given URL. Is it? Nobody is able to access this, folks. Check it directly. able to access it. Check, okay, just check it maybe in an incognito mode. Now, if I click on the revisions, there's only one version running, only one version running. So what I will do is I'll create a new deployment, which is not welcome to Cloud Run, welcome to Cloud Run version 2.0. And let's see the same traffic split option, which was a very cool feature in App Engine. Does it exist here or not? Let's explore that. So for that, I have to have a new version. So I'm just going to do that. So change it. So now when I do it without latest, it's going to be a little tricky. So I'll give a tag. Once this comes, we'll deploy a newer version and do the traffic splitting. Then I'll show you towards the end the command line mode of running it or deploying it, sorry. And it is deployed. So what I will do is I wanted to add a new revision. So if I just click on plus, not this way. Add a revision. So no, not this way. Sorry, 1 minute. Oh, sorry, here. My bad. So click on the current service, edit and deploy a new version or vision. When I do this, instead of latest, I'm going to use, you can click on select your app, this thing. The latest one is this one. That's it. Serve this revision immediately, or you want to serve it later. You can choose that part. So let me just immediately serve it. The second version is what I'm trying to deploy, and that's going to be promoted as the latest one. And if you want to split traffic, we can also do that. Let me show you that also. Done. It is done. Now, if you refresh it, it's going to show version 2.0. You can just refresh your screen and you should be able to see it. Now, if I want to do the same thing which I did in App Engine, split traffic, how can I do? Basically, I can just do basically manage traffic here. Manage, you mention, you can see those revisions there, how much you want to serve, something like 50-50. The total percentage, this one 0. So I don't need, I cannot delete this. Okay, so 50, the latest version is TIT and my older version is KUD. Saving it. Now it's going to be 50-50. Let's wait. The traffic you see currently it's 100, right? It's going to become 50-50. Now you keep refreshing it once. It's going to show. You should be able to see that traffic split easily managed. That's it. So easy. So easy. You get everything what you think when it comes to a web application. Everything is going to work for you. The legacy applications also I can bring it. The modern versions also I can bring it. Everything works. I primarily don't find any issue with Cloud Run except one thing, just the maturity. App Engine is a 13-year-old product. Cloud Run is just a 2 years old product. There are few features which are still in beta. I'm doing a real implementation. There I see because of its beta stuff, there are certain stuffs which breaks, which works sometimes, which does not work sometimes. Apart from that, it has a bright future is what I feel. So it's going to be the next cool feature which you are going to explore at least in the next few years, I would say. Everything is going to be in Cloud Run. So that's one thing. Now let me lastly show how to deploy it in a uh, command line mode so that we know the actual time it takes. So I'm just going to delete this for a minute to make it empty. And I really don't remember the command. So if I don't remember the command, I'll always use this one. So I guess yesterday there was a video from the Google Cloud Platform official YouTube channel. They also talked about this one, interactive one. G Cloud run is your Cloud Run, deploy, then afterwards deploy the service. You have to give a name to the service. I'll call it as batch 6. Then image. What is the image you want to use? So I don't remember the image. I'll just get that from my GCR. So copy this version 2.0 and hyphen managed maximum instance. What you want, allow unauthenticated, we need it. uh, Manage, there's one word called as managed. Let me see whether it comes up. Okay, this is the one, should be good enough. Let me see whether it prompts for something. This is fine. Let me just do time in front of it. There's one word which I see, managed. Something where, platform. What is a platform? Whether you want to run it on GKE, Kubernetes, managed. I want to use managed. Uh, what is the region you want to do it? I want to do it in Singapore. It's a region, so I just need to mention that. So these are the parameters which we did it in the UI also. So I was not remembering it. I used the command, the beta interaction, so I was able to get it. So let's see how long it takes to deploy it. Twelve seconds, folks. 12 seconds. So no magic. It worked. 12 seconds. Now if I just go to my Cloud Run, super fast, right? Super fast. So if I want to get the URL, I can get the URL. It was already mentioned in the here, so you can also use it here. Done. So in 12 seconds, uh, mind-blowing thing. So maybe the first one had some issue, I'm not sure, and usually in the UI it takes longer time for some reason. So command line, we are very sure. So it was super fast. You get all the best features which you get, but only the maturity of the product is going to be an impact. There's some things may be coming up so soon, but some few things are in preview, all those things. So otherwise I would say this has a bright future. uh, Towards the end, I'll talk something about what Cloud Run can do. So once you have all the complete compute options, then I can comment that Cloud Run anything on web can do. Basically, any web application or web API requirement you have, you can easily do it in Cloud Run. And this is also serverless, so I don't need to stop it. No need to delete it. If you want, you can delete it basically. And the drawback, one of the biggest drawback of App Engine was the region cannot be changed. I don't have any problem changing the region. So for example, if I just go to my Cloud Run, I wanted it in US Central, no problem. I can build it. That was the biggest this thing, which was problem, which was there in Cloud Run, App Engine. Now that can be easily resolved with this. I can have, it's like normal virtual machines. You can create it in any region of your choice. So similarly, your Cloud Run, you can create it in any this thing. And Cloud Run, to my understanding, is available everywhere. But your App Engine was not available everywhere. So Singapore, Taiwan, and some parts of Europe and some parts of US, it was not available. It was only available in 19 regions. But Cloud Run has no such limitations. So you should be able to run it everywhere. So let's just deploy this and I'll show you, is it really available everywhere? Per my understanding, almost everywhere, but let me show you that. So let's wait for it to show up in US Central. Initializing the project for, okay, so this part is what is going to take little time, is what I feel. Okay, 1 minute, acceptable. Still 1 minute, and I have the URL which is in US Central, basically, which is in US Central. Basically, that's a good feature, I would say. Now, let's see whether it is available everywhere. When I verified it, it was, but let me just verify it one more time. So Cloud Run, okay, Cloud Run available everywhere in US. This green dot indicates that uh, everywhere available in US, Europe, everywhere available. Uh, Cloud Run, yes, it is available everywhere. But if you see Cloud Function, App Engine, it's not available in some places. In Singapore, it is not available. In Taiwan, it is not available. Meaning, you cannot position App Engine to Taiwan customers, to Singapore customers, and there are few other regions in Europe, and in Europe, App Engine cannot be positioned in Netherlands, in Finland, in Americas, it cannot be positioned in Oregon. So there are limitations there, but Cloud Run does not have anything as such. Only the maturity, 2 years versus 13 years. That's the only thing which I personally felt is a difference. But everything is going to be easily fulfilled with your uh, cloud uh, Cloud Run. And if you don't need it, if you don't want it, there's no need of just going and disabling or anything. Simply delete your service. That's going to be easy. And Cloud Run also has a free quota. Cloud Run also has a free quota, which makes it very one of the best features which you can use. So comparing with your App Engine, Cloud Run and App Engine standard and flexible. So the cost wise, if you see, Cloud Run is going to be very, very cheaper. So what we will do is we'll take a break now. We'll take a break now. Once we take a break and come back, we'll just do a small price comparison. 3 options: flexible, standard, and Cloud Run, and see which one is going to be very cost effective. Okay. So take a 10 minutes break, come back, then we'll look into our pricing comparison.
This conference will now be recorded.
So before the break, we saw all the Cloud Run capabilities. Let me just look into the pricing of it and show you what happens. A comparison, small comparison. Uh, so App Engine Standard, first of all, that is the first product which we started. App Engine Standard, the total number of nodes in your pool, whatever the load you put, it's not going to go beyond one. Assume, let's make it one. Okay, so it's going to be always, that is the amount of load it comes, one. What is this node used for? Some dev purpose, dev environment. Uh, regular, huh? What is this? Sorry. My bad. App engine. That's what I was seeing, something slightly different. So app engine, standard environment in US Central. Let's put it in US Central. And the machine type which you can have is various machine types. Let's use the smallest one, F1. That's the lowest one. Number of instance per hour. So instances per hour. One instance is what I'm going to add. If I just add it, the price is going to be $0, folks. One instance. What is the instance type? F1. The F1 is nothing but something of the configuration of F1 is basically how much? 256 F1 256 MB 600 megahertz of CPU limit. Now if I go to the next part, cloud app engine flexible, same uh, region. Now the pricing is different. They ask vCPUs, memory, disk, all those things. So I'm going to use basically one memory. Can I do it in megabytes? Persistent disk below 10 we cannot do. So let me add this. The cost is going to be $40 if it's flexible. Now let me go to my Cloud Run. Cloud Run. So name of the service, Cloud Run Dev. One CPU, 256 MB RAM. So I can take up to 80. It says in how execution time per this thing. So let me make it as it takes every request, right? It's going to take around 100 milliseconds. Total number of requests. So they have a totally different naming or convention. So let me make it as 2 million. 2 million requests per month. Minimum 0 instances. I'll make it as 1 to avoid cold start. Let's add it. You get it to $8. You get it to $8. So if I make minimum instance was the only one which incurred cost. So if I just do it, edit, I don't want minimum instances running. My cloud run is also $0, folks. So I get 2 million invocations or 2 million invocations per month free with cloud run. So cloud run and app engine is going to be free. Now you have a conflict, but with app engine standard, you cannot have minimum one instance running, right? But here I can have minimum one instance running with just $8, peanuts. So cloud run is going to be little better in the long run is what I felt. So let me just save this. If you want to make a copy of it, you can bookmark it. And the beauty of the pricing calculator is always you can preserve this as this. So any point you look into it, it's going to show the pricing information as per the latest pricing information. So the latest was on 3rd of March, which they have done. So any questions on this, folks? the price wise, if you see, Cloud Run is also going to be cheaper. And App Engine has a free tier, standard has a free tier, but your flexible is always going to be expensive option. The bare minimum also is going to be expensive. Hope that makes sense, folks. That was on the Cloud Run demo. We saw how it works. Now the last compute option in our compute section, the fifth one, compute engine over, Kubernetes engine over, then App Engine, Cloud Run over. The last option is Cloud Functions. So GCF. So in 4 words, if I were to explain this, this is event-driven serverless functions. So only when an event occurs, you can evoke this. If no event occurs, you are not going to evoke it. And this, I would say it as truly serverless. The reason why is when it comes to App Engine, right? You have to wait for a few minutes or few hours to scale down to 0. Same is the case with your Cloud Run. It's going to take time to scale down to 0. But with Cloud Functions, you hit a request, it is going to be served. Once it is served, it immediately goes to 0. So only how long you're sending the request, how long it takes to get the response, only based on that only the cost is going to be there. So if your entire request is going to be processed in say 30 milliseconds, you're going to pay only for 30 milliseconds the cost, the compute cost. So that's really a cool feature. I would say one of the true serverless product is Cloud Functions, to be very frank. It scales down to 0 immediately, does not require any infrastructure, only focus on code. And the equivalent of that in AWS is the popular name which you usually hear, the Lambda, AWS Lambda, and in Azure it is called as Azure Functions. So the popularity wise, if you see, Lambda is more popular because it has some 4 extra capabilities is what I heard. So Cloud Functions is coming up with some better features, all those things. So there's a chance that it's going to be like comparable. At least now itself, I feel it is like slightly comparable. And when it comes to Cloud Functions, the focus is always on code. So whenever it comes to focus is on the code, what kind of runtimes you support is the most important thing. So of late, Cloud Functions has started supporting some good number of runtimes. Previously, it was very, very limited. Java was not there, .NET was not there. Uh, Now they are supporting all those options. So it's now comparable with other cloud platforms. So when it comes to Cloud Functions, the smallest unit which you can deploy is a piece of a code, not an entire web application, folks. It's only going to be one piece of code for you to execute. So usually in programming, they call it as a function, a method, a procedure kind of a stuff. Maybe uh, if I'm sitting in a living room and in the living room, the temperature is more than 40 degrees Celsius or whatever the thing in Fahrenheit. So automatically the sensor should detect it and it should change the temperature to something like 25 degrees Celsius. So this kind of an automation I can do with the help of Cloud Functions. Only an event occurs. When an event occurs, I should evoke it. So that kind of a thing is what you are going to use Cloud Functions, event driven only. For example, a car moving, the fuel is empty. The indicator is going to blink. A car is moving, an accident occurs, airbag pops up. Only when an event occurs, this term comes. So that's where Cloud Functions comes handy. It's not for deploying a complete web application. Please remember it. It's only event driven. You cannot have a website which is event driven completely. So one microservice is a best fit. You have 20 microservice in your web application, it's not a good fit to deploy that in Cloud Functions. Deploy it in App Engine standard, flexible, or in Kubernetes engine, or in Compute Engine, or in your Cloud Run. But Cloud Function is not a good fit. But if you have only one function or one microservice, Cloud Function is a good choice. What are the use cases? I'll talk about that in a minute. This is an important one, folks. The trigger. What could be the trigger? When you upload something to a Google Cloud storage bucket, when you delete an object in a Google Cloud storage bucket, you can trigger it. And there is one more product called as PubSub. We'll talk about this later when we talk in our big data class. Or you can call it via HTTP URL. You send a HTTP request, it's going to evoke. And it's going to take around 20 minutes, or sorry, 20 seconds or 20 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds. Only for that time you are going to be charged. Immediately it will scale down to 0. And the runtime is an important thing. It supports Node, Python, Go, Java, and there are a few stuffs in beta. .NET is important. So it is also supported now. So Ruby, Node, latest version, or at least the so-called latest version are all in beta. So these two are important when it comes to cloud functions, the runtime support. Now I would say I can easily compare it with Lambda. So most of the options which Lambda supports, Cloud Functions also supports it to a great extent. Same is the case with Azure Functions. Google Cloud Functions also can support it. One of my favorite thing is the libraries which it supports. FFmpeg, uh, ImageMagick, Headless Chrome. Now, if you have not used this, let me just explain what is FFmpeg does. So it's an open source video editing tool. Any kind of video editing, you can do it. If you're the 90s kid, usually when this DVD world came, people used to use a VCD cutter, and there was a pirated version of it, all those things. So if you were to cut a video, we were using video VCD cutter at that time. So you can do that very easily with FFmpeg. So, but you need to write a command there. FFmpeg do something. And I extensively use this FFmpeg for my videos, YouTube videos. So if I make a mistake, I don't use any professional software. So I just use FFmpeg to mention, just cut this part of the video from 2 minutes to 2 minutes 25 seconds. I just mention the parameter, it's going to remove it. Or if I want to reduce the volume there, I can do that. Any video editing you can do it, but you have to know the command there. So video editing library is going to be built in for every cloud functions which you deploy, meaning I can use cloud functions as a serverless video editing tool with FFmpeg inbuilt. So meaning you create a video, upload it to Google Cloud storage bucket. We know what is a bucket at least, right? You upload it. The moment a video is uploaded, what's going to happen? You will trigger a cloud functions. Anyway, you would have mentioned remove from this thing to this thing. So what you are going to do basically is on demand. You are going to call this cloud functions and edit it. Totally cool feature. So that's where FFmpeg comes into picture. ImageMagick, I guess the name itself indicates it's something to do with uh, image modifications kind of a stuff. So if you have a color photo, you want to change it to a grayscale, you can do it. If you have an ultra HD this thing, you want to scale it down to standard resolution, or if you want to crop it, rotate it, any kind of image related stuffs, beautification, add filters to a image, you can do it. Again, a very cool feature. Take a phone, take a selfie, upload it to a Google Cloud storage bucket. Immediately it can trigger a function which can call some ImageMagick functions like cropping, putting filters, all those things. A serverless, I guess many of there are lots of apps, right? Beautification apps where people put layer filters and make their photo look good. You can do that with ImageMagick with the cloud functions directly. Headless Chrome. Any idea what is headless Chrome means, folks? Uh, there's one question. Could cloud function be used to trigger an event with compute engine? Something like when the is shutting down and starting up. Definitely possible, Aman. You can do that very easily with cloud functions. But if you ask me, the better choice is to use the trigger feature, which has recently come up with Cloud Run. That's going to be a much better feature compared to writing in cloud functions. The trigger, if the trigger is these things, cloud function is the best choice. But if the trigger is with some other product like GKE, App Engine, or with compute engine, prefer to use Cloud Run plus trigger. So a headless Chrome, as Anil B mentions, it's a Chrome browser without a UI. Very difficult to imagine itself, right? Browser itself is the highlight of the browser itself is UI, but you get a headless Chrome. So whenever you see this word headless, it's without UI. Headless Linux means it does not have a UI basically. So headless Chrome, where do we use headless Chrome is in some kind of automation. For example, if you have a requirement where you have to convert a web page into a PDF. We know in Chrome you can convert a web page into PDF. Just click on save as PDF, it gets converted. That's where headless Chrome can be helpful. So maybe if you have a requirement of doing a conversion of web pages into PDF, you can run it in Cloud Functions and leverage headless Chrome libraries. Or how many of you have heard of this product, Selenium? A testing or a load testing tool with the functionality. So for this Selenium, you basically yes, for automation. So meaning if there's a website, it's basically a record and play option you get. What you do is play. You start playing this Selenium it records all your clicks. You log into go to the website, you put a username, password, log in, add an item to the cart, check it out, do a payment gateway. This is the entire life cycle which you have done. All these things can be recorded with Selenium tool. And if you want to run it in an automated fashion, you can run it in what? With Cloud Functions. So anyway, you're getting a headless Chrome. You get all the script from your Selenium, run it as a serverless automation load testing tool with Selenium. So headless Chrome is going to help you out there. So can one automate the deployment of the service with Selenium? Uh, Not the deployment of Selenium. You need to get the Selenium script. And once you have the script, you can run that script in a headless mode. Then you can have a serverless script automation tool there. Whenever you trigger it, it's going to do the testing for you. So that's how you're going to get. So these are some of the cool features which you can think. And there are n number of use cases. Say for example, if it's a video and there's maybe at the 10th minute you showed by mistake a phone number or a social security number, and you want to mask that information because the video is all good, recording is good, but only 1 minute you have shown or 1 second you have shown it. You want to mask that information, you can use FFmpeg. So there are n number of use cases which you can use for Cloud Functions basically. So is this part clear, folks? It's all trigger based. Only when something happens to a bucket, to a PubSub, what is PubSub we'll talk later, or you evoke it manually with a HTTP. So in this case, Cloud Function is going to come, it's going to do the task and go down, immediately go down, scale down to 0. So the basic way it works is something like this. 3 types of triggers only, which is GCP specific: HTTP, storage, PubSub. PubSub is basically a messaging service. We'll talk about it in more detail. When we look into PubSub, we will do one more time PubSub Cloud Functions demo. When we explore storage, we'll explore storage Cloud Functions demo together. So these are your triggers. When something happens to these, Cloud Function is going to evoke, and it can call close to 20 plus GCP services automatically. Inbuilt capabilities are there easily. For example, let's take an example. You are in Japan, you are in Tokyo, you are feeling hungry, and you are in a restaurant where everything is written in Japanese content, and you don't know how to read Japanese content. To do this translation from Japanese to English, all those things, you can build a tool itself. Let's imagine something like, and you can write a code a little faster. So you take a photo from your phone, the menu card, which is written in Japanese, upload it to, let me just take my highlighter here. So upload here to a Google Cloud Storage bucket. The moment you upload it, Cloud Function is going to trigger. Once it triggers, right, because you have uploaded an image. So there are few APIs which Google provides called as Vision API. What it does is it's going to do a OCR, optical character recognition, image to text. Once the text is there, it's going to be in a Japanese content. So what I will do is I will use a translator service. So translate Japanese content to English and dump it back to a Google Cloud Storage bucket. I see my English content. So everything is going to be fully serverless here. So you can have this kind of an app very easily. So translate it, you get the Japanese content, translate to English, you get the English content. It's going to be textual, dump it back to Google Cloud Storage. So n number of use cases you can easily use. Let me show one real use case, and there's an article also on that. If I can go to there's a very nice article. If you want, you can also try it. Where do I get that? Choosing. There was an option which I remember. Uh, I had bookmarked it actually. Maybe I'll show you tomorrow. Okay, 1 minute. Let me see it in browser. Uh, so many links, little difficult to sometimes get it. Uh, uh, it's already uploaded, Anil. So only I need to update it. So already some bookmarks are already there. Already it's there in your common folder. So if I add new things, I update it. Okay. Okay, I'll show you that link. That was a nice one. So I'll show you next, maybe tomorrow. So the whole is whenever you get a Gmail, uh, whenever you get a Gmail, the Gmail, if it is having a image, if it's a mammal, uh, the moment email comes, functions, and your email is having an image, that image is going to be sent to Vision API. And if the image is a mammal, you're going to mark that email as important. If it's not having a mammal, then it's going to be marked as not important. So those kind of integrations you can do very easily with cloud functions. Cloud functions. So let me just do a small demonstration about cloud functions. A simple one, because we are going to look into two more complex demos when we look into storage and PubSub. So for now, let me just use the HTTP trigger and do it for you. It's going to be a very simple one. So if I just go to my cloud functions, the last option, the compute option. So function is a live event based asynchronous compute solution to create small single purpose functions that responds to a cloud event without need to manage the servers or runtime. So you don't need to do anything. Just upload your code. That's it. So let me just do that. Create a function. Let's call this as HTTP trigger, and cloud functions has a limitations, so available everywhere. So some regions it is not available. So it's a regional resource. If you see in Singapore, it is not available. In Taiwan, it is not available. But in some places, it is available. So it's not. It's something similar to your app engine. So it's not available everywhere. So the closest one for me is in Asia. I can take Mumbai, but I doubt whether it's going to work. So I'm going to take Hong Kong. I'll take Hong Kong. And the most important thing here is the trigger type. So there are lots of trigger types, but you may say, Mahesh, you mentioned only 3. Why I mentioned 3 only is those are the only 3 which is generally available. HTTP, PubSub, storage. Firestore, we are going to talk from tomorrow onwards, which is a database, NoSQL database, which is in GCP product, but is in beta. So that's the reason I did not discuss it. And there are a few other options which you see, Google Analytics, Firebase, all those things. Firebase is again an acquisition which Google did. This is used heavily with mobile applications. So architects and mobile application, so nothing to do there. So we will never focus on any Firebase related stuffs. Firestore will definitely focus, but since it is in beta, so I did not explore that. We did not see that. So now let's go with HTTP. Whether you want to allow authentication or unauthentication invocation is fine. So let me select authentication invocation. When I mention HTTP, based on my region, my project ID, I'm going to get a URL like this, folks. And if I mention, I always have to use HTTPS. I should never use HTTP. I input this. And this is a new feature which they have turned on, which was not there. So how do I know this is whether new feature or not? Please make sure you keep reading your release note. There's a release notes which you get. You can look into that release notes very often. I'll show you where I can show you the release notes. So by looking into the release notes very often, you will keep up to date. So yesterday I was looking into it. So this was a new feature. Now, if I don't turn it on, I can call this without HTTP also. So without HTTPS. So either way I can call. But if I put this restriction, only HTTPS, which is going to be a better way. So that's it. Click on, before I click on save, I want to, this is where one of your cloud architect skill is going to come into picture, because basically this is focused towards code, which we are not going to write. There's going to be an application developer who's going to write it, an app developer who is going to write it. You can provision in which region you want, all those things you can recommend it. One important thing which you should decide when the application developer says, I want to go with app cloud functions or anything, the question which you should ask is, how long does it take to process your request? When something happens, you need to process something, right? How long does it take? Now, if he says, I don't have idea, you should ask him, please check it out, how long it takes. The reason is cloud functions has a timeout issue. So it cannot go more than 9 minutes. It has to be less than 9 minutes, meaning I send a request. It's going to wait till 9 minutes. If it does not get response, it's going to time out. So this is going to be a design consideration which you need to take into consideration if you were to go with app in cloud functions. If it's going to take more time, then you have to use features like queuing, all those things. But if it's a normal request and you don't want to include any queuing mechanisms, all those things, make sure it gets processed in less than 9 minutes. This could be a potential interview question, folks. What is any reason when you should avoid cloud functions? The timeout. Timeout is a constraint here. Now, if it is an event driven, you want to write everything in cloud functions, but this timeout is a concern, then the option which you can use is switch to cloud run. Cloud run has a timeout of 15 minutes if I'm not wrong, or more. So this timeout is something which you need to keep in mind. So cannot be more than 9 minutes. And because it's a compute option, what is the default service account it's going to use? It's going to use App Engine default service account, which is going to have editor role by default. Now, auto scaling feature. What is the max you can go? You can mention that. So that's my advanced settings. Click on save. Next part, go to click on next. This is where you write the code, folks. So you can write the code in the languages .NET, Node.js 4 is in beta, Ruby, Ruby on Rails or Ruby, Python 3.9, remaining are all in GA. So you can choose language of your choice. Since we are doing Node.js from the beginning, I'll go with Node.js. So I have the code and they give a code inbuilt. So it's a template. So you can write it inline here. If you are a person who is comfortable writing a code, you can write here. It shows the suggestion, auto suggestion, inbuilt auto completion or suggestion part. You can easily get it if you want. Or what you can do is you can upload it to your source repository. Upload it to Google Cloud Storage. From there, you can bring it. You have multiple options to get the code. So if you want to write it on the fly, you can write it in the editor itself. You don't need any tool. Very cool feature, I would say. Here, this is actually a method. This is actually a method or a procedure. What it does, the name of the method is hello world. Hello world. I'll call it as hello world batch 6. This is the name of my function. That's my entry point. Now what I'm going to do is if you send any query string with the message, it's going to output that. Otherwise, it's going to just say hello world to batch 6. That's it. To do this, it may take 30 milliseconds, 20 milliseconds. Only for that, you're going to pay the cost. That's it. So can deploy code, you deploy it. That's it. And again, the deployment will be very, very fast. I would say 2 minutes, 3 minutes, all there. You'll be able to access it. Deploy it in any of the available ones. It's a regional resource. Only compute engine is zonal. Remaining everything, you have an option compute options. So let's wait for this. And once it comes up, we should be able to trigger it. Very simple. You are going to have an HTTP URL, just call it. How many times you call it? Each call is one invocation. So each call is going to be charged for you. And like standard and cloud, you have free tiers already. So 2 million invocations per month is totally free. 2 million. So one call is one invocation. So the demo which we are going to do now is totally free for us. Already we are using free trial account. In that we are having a free tier also. So the function is created. Let me go get the URL. So I can click on the function, go to the trigger. This is my URL, folks. Let me just paste it in the chat for you. It's going to just say hello world, nothing else. It's going to say just hello world, nothing else. Once we hit too much of request, right, you should be able to see basically a invocation per second graph. This is going to get updated, which is going to show how many times you have called it. Let me just evoke it. So it's just going to say hello world from batch 6. It does not pass any string. So if I pass a string and the name of the string is message, as per the code, message GCP box. That's it. So if I send a message like this, it's going to show that message in the text. Now for this, right, you have an application or a function running, which is hosted in some server. And we don't know what is a server, all those things, because it's totally serverless. We don't need to worry about where is going to like what is the infrastructure, in what kind of whether it's a Windows, it's a Linux. If it's Linux, what is the distribution, what is the version, what are the softwares running in it? We don't need to worry about it. Our aim is only, I want Node.js runtime. That's it. Specifically 14 version or 12 version, because my code is going to be compatible with this one. That's it. You just do it and upload it. It's going to work. Now we have tried evoking it couple of times. Let me just refresh the screen. This graph should have updated now. The number of invocations, 2 or 3, and you people should have clicked at twice. We should have some graph. Mm, it's not still there, so we have to wait for a few more minutes for it to show up. It's going to show how many invocations. By the time this graph comes up, let me show you the pricing calculator of Cloud Functions. If I search for Cloud Functions, the way you give the information for Cloud Functions is basically same. What is the memory type, memory and the machine type you want? So let me just leave it as default. Uh, execution, how long takes each execution takes. So I'm going to mention it as 30 milliseconds or 100 milliseconds. Or if you don't know how long it takes, no problem. Just write functions. Go to your logs. Go to your logs. It's going to say how get executed. Just get that number, average it, and put it. Now, for example, I see so many times people have called it. First time it took 122 milliseconds. Second time 62. Then one more time, maybe from a different location, 300 milliseconds, 82 milliseconds. Going forward, it is taking little lesser time. So 80. Now, if I put as an average something like 150 is what is my each execution takes. Bandwidth requirement, I'm just going to leave it default. Let me click on SC. What is the cost? Zero cost. Zero cost. So if I go to invocations, 2 million invocations, if I put, it's going to be still free for me. 2 million invocations is free. The moment I put slightly more, like or 3 million invocations, 0.04 is what you're going to pay. So basically, it's going to be again a very cost-effective solution, but for one microservice only, not for the entire web application. If you were to focus on deploying an entire web application, Cloud Run, App Engine, Kubernetes Engine, or Compute Engine is a best fit. Now let's see whether the graph has populated or not. Yes, you see this small, this thing, it shows how many times it has evoked. 3 times per minute it has been evoked. But entire demo which we did is totally free because we are not evoked million invocations. So that's fine for us. Now, if you don't like this Cloud Functions, go ahead and delete it. You can go ahead and delete it. But here you cannot do traffic splitting, all those things. You have one version running at any point of time. That's it. If you don't like it, you can delete it. You don't have that issue of one app engine in one project. You can have multiple Cloud Functions in different regions easily. Clear? Event-based system. Any questions on this, folks? On the various compute options which to use Cloud Functions in the real world. I told you, right? Like you have a requirement on a trigger based. So maybe when we do the demo, I have a requirement from one of the consultant. Like they have a requirement like this. There is a dot sc CSV file. They want to upload it to Google Cloud Storage. It is exactly same as Lambda. That's the equivalent of Lambda in GCP. So you have a file, upload it to Google Cloud Storage. The moment it gets uploaded, they want to read that CSV file and insert the data into a DB, a database. So here I'm using Cloud Functions, folks. Something like HR's uploading some CSV file. So I want to insert it into a database. So event driven. Only, and I don't want to run now I can run a virtual machine here, but the drawback is the virtual machine should be always running 24/7. We don't know when the HR is going to upload the file. But when I want to basically have it in serverless mode, just go with your Cloud Functions. That's it. Whenever you want it when you upload it, you want to trigger it, go with Cloud Functions. That's it. So any event driven, you go for it. Now that's the last one, folks. There is one more compute option which we cannot do it in the class. The only reason is I don't have a data center. So if you go to your compute options, so if you go to your compute options, we finished compute engine, we finished Kubernetes, we finished Cloud Functions, Cloud Run. The only option which we did not do is VMware engine. So for which I have to have a on-prem stuff. So that's the reason I'm not able to do that part. Uh, apart from that, we have seen all the compute options. Now 5 options are there. When to use what is going to be really confusing. So for that, I have a small flow chart. We'll look into that flow chart and stop it for today. Okay. So a small tip, if it's event driven, go with GCF, Cloud Functions. Web-based workload, GAE. Container-based web workload, Cloud Run. Any containerized workload, database, batch script, CI/CD process, or a web application, or a simple uh, web application, for anything which is containerized, go with GKE. If you cannot do anything, if it's a licensed product, it requires GPUs, TPUs, or it requires local SSD. Or some licensed proprietary license, all those things, go with your fallback option. Good old friend, Google Compute Engine. GAE is your app engine. Google App Engine, GAE. So I purposely put acronyms, folks, so that you get used to it. So Cloud Functions, App Engine, Cloud Run. Cloud Run does not have an acronym because GCR is already taken by our container registry, GAE and GC. So this is your tip. Now this may not be really helpful, but keep none of compute engine. That's your fallback option. Now I have created a small decision tree, can help you out to remember things easily. So start. Does your application needs specific OS or kernel? Something like Kali is one of the OS which is used for penetration testing. So if you need that, or you need SSD, GPUs, TPUs, or a specific vCPU and memory type. If the answer is yes, use Compute Engine. Simple. If you say no, I don't have that specific requirement, then you ask a follow-up question. This is how you should ask it to your customers also. Does your application needs to be cloud agnostic? It uses protocols apart from HTTPS. Basically, you're asking whether it is web focused or non-web focused. So if you say, yes, I want my applications or my workload be cloud agnostic, it has to use some other protocols. Answer is yes. You ask one more follow-up question. Do you want to have your own Kubernetes cluster? Then if you say yes, you go with GKE. If you say no, I want it to be cloud agnostic, but I don't want to manage my cluster, then you can run it in Cloud Run. it's going to be web focused, but you are not managing your cluster. It's not going to use Cloud Run. If you go back to the flowchart and if you say no, it's not cloud agnostic, it's not cloud agnostic, it has to be web focused, then give me an option. If you say the opposite of cloud agnostic is cloud native. So if you're going with cloud native, you have two options. Is this service event driven or not event driven? If it is event driven, go with the cloud functions. If it is not, if you have a native solution which is going to be web focused, which is your GAE. So all the 5 compute options we figured. Thanks, Mangesh. Yeah, so took time to do this slide actually. So, and this is done explicitly in this batch only. So I used to use an older image which was not so good, but I thought I will create something. So it was from Google, but it was almost 3 years old image. So Cloud Run was never added in that. So I thought let me do it here. So that's the complete stuff, folks, on the various compute options which you should be thinking of. Yeah, using it. So this is a good chart. So I'm going to take a screenshot and add it in the examination tip and also in the implementation tip. Okay, so I'll add it towards the end. So I have one last slide uh, about specifically this slide was created only for App Engine. So in a project, if you were to do it right, how many compute engines you can create? Basically, it is limited by your quota. What is your quota which you have? And you can easily delete the VM. You have no issues. If you make a mistake, you can fix it. Same is with your Kubernetes engine. So you can get n number of Kubernetes cluster as long as you have the enough quota, and you can easily delete it. Same is the case with your Cloud Run and cloud functions. When it comes to cloud functions, per project you can create 1,000 functions. One function is what we created, so we can create 999 functions easily. And if you want to delete it, you can delete it. Same is the case with Cloud Run also. But the specific or the a different animal which you have in the compute option is App Engine. The whole reason why they have done this is because this was the first product. They had some challenges, or maybe they did not even think of the limitation. They kept it like that. So when it comes to App Engine, only one App Engine per project, and the location cannot be changed. Whatever you simple answer from Google support is going to be create a new project. This has to be emphasized very well, folks. Whenever you think of App Engine, think of this. The region is going to be fixed. Get the buy-in from the customer, so you cannot change it. And there are options to have multiple services, multiple versions of those services. All those things are possible. uh, Completely deleting is not possible, so better disable it. So if you're not going to use it, better disable it, disable the applications there. So a slightly, the whole slide was only done purposely for App Engine, because many people, when they start doing it, they see, where can I delete my App Engine? I don't want. So you cannot delete it, you can only disable it. If you were to delete your App Engine, the only option is delete the project. That's the only option which you. So that's something on our compute engine, folks. The module 3, which took a long time because that's the base. So we are in our 13th class, so we are still in our module 3. That took a long time because we had to cover lots of stuff. This is going to work as a base for us going forward. So let me stop it here. Tomorrow when we come back, strong suggestion is refresh your knowledge. I'll also give a brief overview or the summary, not an overview, a summary of what we did over the past 6 classes or so. Then we'll jump into a quiz. Okay, so where you are going to see what's your understanding on the various compute options. I'll try to cover questions from all the modules or all the components, and we'll see how it goes. Let me stop it here. If there's any question, happy to answer, uh, because starting a quiz in the next 5 minutes does not make any sense. So we'll stop it here. Any questions? Let me know, folks. Any questions? No questions? Do we need to read? Read it, but when you because the PDF version is already uploaded. It's already uploaded. So what I would suggest is stop till quiz, because the answers are also going to be there. Okay, apart from your videos, not required. So we have covered to a great extent. If something is missing, if you are not getting it, just go and look into it. That's it. From the exam perspective, we have covered everything, Anil. So from the compute options. So if there's no question, Vivek has something. Go ahead, Vivek.
Sir, let's get it concluded and maybe nahi.
Hello.
Sorry. Let the training gets concluded, sir. I need some 5 minutes, but not related to this and training. But I have something to share and something to learn.
Yeah. Okay, so fine. So
Please,
it's concluded. It's stopped. So there's no questions from others. So
let
if you
the
want, you can ask. Yeah.
recording has been stopped. No, that's why I'm asking.
Okay. Stop the you want. Okay.
It is
Okay.
not.
So let's stop recording here. All right. Let me stop it.